Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump warning about even more intense strikes on Iran and its nuclear facilities, what he's saying about the state of negotiations, and which sites could be targeted. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill working on a bill to avert a pre-election shutdown. The White House makes extra requests and updates on how key midterm races are shaping up. U.S. and Mexican trade negotiators are starting three-day talks aimed at revising the North American trade agreement. This just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on most goods from Canada. New Jersey finds some 6,600 non-citizens on its voter rolls, and some of them have already voted illegally. The governor is addressing the concerning finding. The Trump administration pauses more than $1 billion in Medicaid payments to California and Minnesota amid fraud concerns, what the states must now provide to get the funding released. The Trump administration is weighing sanctions against China over the alleged theft of American artificial intelligence, the evidence U.S. officials say they are finding in Chinese models.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump threatening to step up strikes on Iran after 3 U.S. troops were killed in the past few days. He says he's focused on doing the right thing instead of being concerned about the midterms. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. So Iris, good afternoon to you. Can you tell us what is the president saying today?
Good afternoon to you as well. So it comes as the U.S. is now conducting the 10th consecutive day of strikes against Iran. And that's hours after President Trump warned that Iran will have to pay many times over as they kills an American soldier. Now, President Trump speaking with the Lebanese president in the Oval Office this afternoon says that Iran wants desperately to meet, but the U.S. is now not interested in meeting them until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way. The president saying this. Watch.
They want to desperately meet, and until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way, we have no interest in even.
We're going to hit them, as the president said, 10 times harder, which every night we're degrading them further and further. And the president has all the options necessary. If they want to talk, they can talk. Otherwise, they can deal with the War Department, and we're prepared.
Restarted between the U.S. and Iran about 10 days ago after Iran hit a commercial ship in the Strait of Hormuz, violating the Memorandum of Understanding with the U.S. The U.S. has been striking Iran every day ever since, and the president today signaling even more strikes by saying that the U.S. will hit any site that Iran is thinking about nuclear development. In particular, the president says that the U.S. will be hitting Iran's Pixax Mountain probably very soon and very heavily. And that's the heavily fortified underground complex near Iran's damaged uranium enrichment facility, where President Trump says Iran may have moved their nuclear centrifuges into. President Trump says even as he's talking about it now in public, signaling that he's going to hit it, Iran cannot do anything about it. Watch.
Any site where they're even thinking about nuclear, we'll be hitting it very, very powerfully. Now, nobody knows except the Iranians the damage that we've done to them. And honestly, they haven't seen anything yet. We've been nice. We've been nice.
The president adds that he's focused on doing the right thing instead of being concerned about the potential impact on midterm elections. Meanwhile, the president's vow to strike Iran many times harder comes after Iran over the weekend killed at least 2 U.S. troops by hitting a U.S. base in Jordan, while a third U.S. soldier was killed during the detonation of an Iranian drone in Iraq. Now, this morning, the U.S. military releasing the identity of that third U.S. soldier killed. He's Sergeant Michael Swinton, 30, from North Carolina. His wife posting a picture of him on Facebook showing him hugging a little girl. Meanwhile, 2 other soldiers who were killed in Jordan were 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyra Fian from Hawaii and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez from Texas. Iran today continued to hit neighboring countries, especially Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, where U.S. forces are present. The administration, meanwhile, vowing to respond as House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying that Iran is now turning everyone in the region into an enemy by hitting all of its neighbors, adding that the Trump administration is now working around the clock to prevent these tragic losses. Watch.
And I know that this administration is working around the clock to resolve that in a way so that we don't suffer any more troop losses. This is a great tragedy. It shouldn't happen. But it is a very important objective that I believe we've achieved to ensure that the largest sponsor of state of terrorism does not have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump today stressing that the U.S. has the best military equipment in the world and that Iran has indeed been heavily degraded. But he does acknowledge that the last attack on Jordan could have been prevented if other people could have been better at doing their job, adding that it could have been prevented if different, quote, operators were in charge. Now, President Trump says he will attend a dignified transfer of the bodies of these troops to pay respect to them. That's going to happen at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thank you for the report. Iran is broadening its attacks across the Gulf, launching missile and drone attacks targeting U.S. sites in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. It follows another round of U.S. strikes on southern Iran. Jordan's military says it intercepted and destroyed 5 Iranian drones and 3 missiles. Iran's Revolutionary Guards also claims it targeted a U.S. military site in the country. The terror group also says it targeted infrastructure in Bahrain belonging to tech company Amazon, and Qatar is asking the United Nations to hold Iran legally responsible for attacks on its territory and a Qatari tanker, demanding compensation for the damage. Meanwhile, a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz was struck by an unknown projectile, forcing its crew to abandon ship. The attacks came after U.S. forces carried out a 10th consecutive day of strikes against Iranian military targets. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and the nation's top military officer head to Capitol Hill this afternoon to defend the White House's emergency funding request. Lawmakers are expected to press Hegseth and Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane on the growing cost of the conflict with Iran. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins will also appear alongside them. The White House is asking Congress to approve an $87 billion supplemental spending package, including $67 billion for defense. And today, voters in Arizona are heading to the polls to elect their preferred nominee for governor and for key congressional races. President Trump has endorsed Congressman Andy Biggs in the Republican primary for governor. Biggs faces a crowded field that includes Congressman David Schweikert, Scott Neely, a concrete pumping contractor making his second run for governor, and business owner Ken Miseli. Whoever emerges will face Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs in November. To run for governor, Schweikert is leaving an open seat in the competitive 1st District. Also worth watching is the 4th District, where the race will indicate whether the socialist surge has hit Arizona. The Democratic primary pits progressive Kai Newkirk against the incumbent Congressman Greg Stanton. House Republicans again today sounding the alarm on the trend.
And scarcity is not some accidental side effect of the system. Scarcity is actually the result. The Soviet Union promised equality, then delivered breadlines. It promised security, then built a society of surveillance and fear. It promised liberation, then trapped millions of people behind an iron curtain. That's where that road to communism leads. Yet the radical left is selling the same lie in America today.
It's incumbent upon all of us to get the truth out there about the threats that we are facing as a country with these radical people that want to bring this horrific ideology here.
And we'll talk more about democratic socialism, but New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says his administration is talking with the city's legal department about whether he can arrest Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. And the FBI arrests an anti-ICE rider for allegedly setting fire outside a New York City federal building. Joining us now to discuss is Mike Leon, Director of Strategy for the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show. and podcast. So first of all, good afternoon to you both. Tony, I like your suit, very colorful. Mike, I'll start with you today. So just very simple here.
Wow. Nothing on the nice light gray blazer for Mike. Come on, Don.
I know, seriously. I wore a nice tight black shirt. It's all right. Go ahead, Don. Ask me the question.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry. Let's see. Let's try to find a compliment for you. That suit looks very, very clean on you, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
I appreciate that.
Let's move on. So a very simple question here. Do you think Mamdani, at the end of the day, is he going to do anything after saying these things publicly?
Yeah, good to see you guys on this great Tuesday afternoon, and we're all in our nice suits and ties, or at least one of us is. Look, guys, two things can be true at the same time, okay? We cannot continue to ask the mayor of New York City and the locality to what he's going to do when a foreign leader steps on U.S. soil that happens to have an ICC warrant. Because there are 10 of them out there with foreign leaders, and none of them, to my knowledge, are going to get arrested by the New York City Police Department, nor does New York City, according to federal prosecutors that I've talked to, both former and current, have the authority to arrest somebody. That's number one. Number two, media out there, I'm looking at you, stop asking the mayor of New York City about Israel and Palestine and Middle East relations. He is not an ambassador. He does not work for the current U.S. administration under President Trump. He doesn't have any relations with the, I know the NYPD and the IDF have had some relationships prior to Mamdani coming into office. He doesn't have any relationships. He doesn't have any legal authority to do any of this. Stop asking him about this stuff. And also from Mamdani's perspective, because I know Mamdani was asked a lot about this during the campaign cycle, he needs to stop talking about that. Go back to your roots of what you did during the campaign cycle when everybody on that panel got asked about Israel and your first trip outside of New York City. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. We got a lot of problems here in New York. We got to fix the problems here in New York. Okay, so let's focus on that. Let's not focus on Israel. That's not your prerogative. That's not your issue. That's not your jurisdiction. Any other adjective you want to insert here. So it's driving me crazy twofold from the media perspective to continue to ask the mayor of New York City, why aren't we asking the mayor of Los Angeles what they're going to do about Benjamin Netanyahu when he steps foot in California, where there's a large concentration of Jewish folks? We don't continue to ask that. We continue to ask it to feed a narrative because Mamdani is Muslim. So the media's got to stop doing that. Mamdani's got to stop taking the bait and answering these type of questions about it because you have no authority to do anything about it. So it's just political grandstanding.
Okay, so Tony, two things. Your comments on if media should stop asking and your comments on Mamdani's responses.
Yeah, so the media clearly is asking him these questions because this is something that Mamdani has made a cornerstone of his policy and his personality. And this is, again, he led with these statements suggesting that New York City it needs to be this haven for little Palestine, that he is consistently called as a leader of the Democratic Socialists of America, as the new, according to a lot of the pundits, according to a lot of members of his own party, he is the new head of the Democratic Party. He is now the one who is the kingmaker, according to all of these primaries that we've been seeing. And so when people ask him questions, it makes sense to ask him things about a broad policy perspective. Also, you go where the news goes. This guy is willing to say, and will go out in front of everyone and say really bizarre, outlandish, and factually incorrect things about foreign policy, and will then turn around and he'll say, well, are you going to actually do something? You always say that Democrats need to do something. Are you going to have his arrest? And instead of saying, no, of course not, we're not doing that, he'll go, well, I don't know. We're looking at legal option. He likes the cameras. He's inviting the media to ask these questions. He doesn't cut off the reporter who takes 3.5 minutes to ask that question both times she's asked it and says, get to the point. The answer is no, I'm focusing on New York. No, he's not. He did a little rent freeze. It didn't work. He did a little tax policy. It got a bunch of millionaires out of the city. He's done little bits here and there. Now it's paid family night out to hire a babysitter thing. This kind of like, I float something, and then as soon as someone starts to call me on the carpet, I'm going to go complain about the Jews. Oh, okay. Best of luck to you with that. I don't think it's really going to work in the general election for the DSA candidates in more purple districts around the country, but it certainly looks really great right now to suggest that you're some type of fighter of genocide and nonsense. Again, from little Mr. Apron Strings, mommy being a professor, daddy being a producer, and knowing nothing about the broader world. He chooses to talk about it, though. That's all him. Media asks me something I don't know about. I say, not my ball of wax, and I move on. Not that difficult.
So, Mike, what do you think about that? He could have answered in a number of different ways, but he chose specifically the way he answered. I mean, he never said Iran's leader belongs in The Hague, right, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with the last parts of Tony's statement. I don't disagree with your questioning. I do think he needs to stop taking the bait and stop answering about that and get back to what he was saying on the campaign side. I disagree with Tony's assessment about Mamdani so far as New York City mayor. He's only been in office, what? What's January? So he's only been in office for 6 months. Crime is down. The Knicks won a championship. That's all I care about. I didn't really care about anything else with respect to New York City. Again, I'm half joking about that, but there are some statistical measures that are in his favor. There are some things that he has tried. And government is a group project, guys. It's incredibly easy to campaign. I got asked this Sunday at a party about if I ever thought about running for office. I'm like, well, if I did think about running for office, I'm not bright enough, because when you have to drill into policy and when people actually nail you down, actual reporters nail you down on policy, it's going to be tougher to answer to things. But it would be incredibly easy to campaign because I know how to be in front of the camera. I know how to take the bait. I know how to answer questions, as Tony and Don and this entire network and other networks can attest to. That's incredibly easy because I can make a bunch of pie in the sky things. Trump said it. Every politician has said it. It's not just Trump. It's not just Mamdani. Every politician has said certain things. And then when they get to government and they realize it's a group project and they realize they have to work with others and that they have to have buy-in from others and they actually have to bring their directional pulls back to the center, then they realize that they can't work. And then they got to go back out on the road. They got to go back to town halls. They got to explain why it doesn't work. And they never give the correct answer, which is, government's a group project. When I campaigned, I didn't really mean it. I just wanted to say it so that way you would vote for me. They can't say that because then they won't get reelected. Your first order of business is to get elected. Your second order of business as a politician is to get reelected. And those are the two rules of being a politician. And unfortunately for Mamdani/fortunately, he needs to stop doing things that are outside of his jurisdiction. Any legal expert, prosecutor that's on television, anybody that's worked for the New York City Police Department knows how this works. They have no authority to arrest a foreign leader based on the laws of this country. That would have to come at the federal level if the ICC warrant was actually executed, and it would have to come from federal enforcement. So stop with the pretending and giving these things, and we're going to follow the letter of the law, and we're talking to our lawyers. No, you're not, because I'll save you the time, and I'm not even a lawyer. It's going nowhere.
Okay, Tony, you brought up the DSA. Why do you think Mamdani is doing this? I mean, is he trying to appeal to a certain demographic of voters? Yes. What does he gain politically?
Yep. Yeah. So we saw this with Marat, the young lady out in Colorado, the DSA candidate, who says that it's all about the global South. The idea is that there is this entire group of people in the global South who the United States has raped and pillaged and plundered and exploited and colonized, and so they deserve revenge. And so you'll see this when Mamdani releases a little ethnic map. The three groups who are the most prominent ethnic groups in New York were left out, and like little Bangladesh was given a little neighborhood in New York. And it's not because Mamdani cares about Bangladesh. He doesn't give the flip of a wooden nickel about people from Bangladesh or other minor countries. It is all about suggesting that the United States is a great oppressive evil, and it must be overturned. That is what the Democratic Socialists of America openly say. And what they want: the abolition of the Constitution, of the Senate. They want the Congress, the House of Representatives only, to be expanded, and then to appoint the president and to appoint a greatly expanded Supreme Court. Again, this is not something that's like red meat clickbait for Fox News circa 2007. This is something that they are openly saying themselves right here and right now. They are openly Marxist. They will argue with you if you dare criticize Mao and the hundreds of millions who have died to communism over the last century. They'll call you just a victim of CIA brainwashing. And I've been to those rallies that the B-roll crew is putting up on camera right now. I've talked to these people person to person. I've seen the polling from Nate Silver, who just released today that the new base of the Democratic Party, that's like 71, 72% going to the left, are postgraduate degree, low income earners, meaning they got their degree in anti-colonialism and basket weaving. No one wants to hire them. And so they think that they should be able to overturn the country. It's all against the global South, needs to come in and run things. That's clearly who Mamdani is appealing to. And then if you question him on it, he will lie to you and say, I'm just a member of the working class. I'm just a working man like you. And he can't even explain to Lulu of the New York Times what working class means. Not a single one of these socialist candidates can. And it's hilarious to watch Hakeem Jeffries and Elizabeth Warren, far too cowardly to actually hold their party together. It was embarrassing when the Republicans sacrificed part of their party to the populists back in 18 and 20, just to be fair.
So, Mike, I mean, to Tony's point, for decades, support for Israel was one of the most bipartisan issues. So the fact that there is an environment now where these politicians are comfortable saying such things, I mean, is that a sign of a shift in the Democratic Party? And it's not just Mamdani, right? You have Milat Piros, Abdul Al-Sayed. I mean, you hear it more often now.
Well, I think there's a couple things at play underneath that, and the reason why the support for Israel has dwindled. And it is the guy who is under ICC criminal warrant with respect to Benjamin Netanyahu and the things that he has said for over 30 plus years that haven't come true, haven't come to fruition, and now have the United States entangled in a war in that part of the world. So, I mean, and we're showing him right now, apropos. So I think there are some things that again, this is not to absolve October 7th. This is not to absolve any of that. And I don't even want to go back into the histrionics of when Israel said they pulled out all of their troops out of Gaza, but then don't allow Gazans to actually leave freely, and only less than 10% of them are allowed to go across the border to actually find work. There are things that Israel has done from that perspective. And then the continued onslaught into Gaza. And obviously, again, they're attacked on all fronts. It's a chicken or egg type of respect to Iran and its proxies and the attacking of Israel and vice versa, right? There's a reason why the Iron Dome was created. But in terms of the way it's gone over the last, let's say 6-8 years, if we just work in election cycles over those 2-year intervals, there's a reason why the support has dwindled, because more money has been invested into Israel. Other people have come out against, and again, I don't want to use Marjorie Taylor Greene as an example here, never want to do that. But there have been folks that, again, ran on certain things campaign-wise. Then they get into Congress, and then they see the way certain things work. And then they see the way the AIPAC has in terms of an influence perspective. I'm not going to put the nefarious angle as some have done, but they see all of that. And then obviously they see the output, which is American lives have been lost in this war. 15, I believe now, or maybe a few more. Millions of dollars are at stake. Gas is high. I think all of that kind of stems. It's not an anti-Semitic take to be upset with the government of Israel and the way Benjamin Netanyahu has carried on some of his relations and some of his foreign policy perspective, and why the United States gives so much money. Because the whole point of making America great again was to actually be, and not necessarily holistically isolationist, but to focus on this territory, specifically the United States and North America, shoring up those territories, not focusing on the Middle East and the millions of dollars that we pour out there, not only in military support, but other methods. So I don't think it's anti-Semitic. I know it's not anti-Semitic, I know it's not, to criticize the government of Israel. And I think that's why the dwindling support has cascaded. And look, it cost Kamala Harris in 2024. And those voters let them know. Mamdani is playing the politics. I got a microphone in front of me. I'm going to get asked that question. Yes, he's Muslim, but obviously he knows in his city, which is a large concentration of not only Jewish folks, obviously Brad Lander, as you see here in the photo, is friends with him, and they campaigned on that Muslims and Jews can work together. But he knows that there's a large concentration of Muslim folks here from the Arab world. He knows that that's going to reach a large quantity of people. Does he have the biggest authority to do anything about that? No, of course not. But the dwindling support for Israel is first an inward look, if we're truly being analytical about this. Not absolving October 7th, but Israel has to have an analytical look internally of some of the things that they have done and what has happened in Gaza post-October 7th for some of this.
And Tony, we have to look at how these things about Israel are being said, right? The way it's being said, Tony, and who's saying it.
I think also the real question is what's being assumed is true. And as having spent some time outside of the United States and actually doing investigatory journalism and arguing with Israeli officials on certain matters in the King David and Jerusalem, what I have seen up close, what I've looked at the data, I'm hearing a lot of assertions like, oh, well, Israel did these things. And then I say, show me a source. And there's no source that's known. It's just that Netanyahu is secretly entangling the United States in these wars because Israel said, we're going to strike. And then the United States said, no, we want to strike first so that we have operational that we have operational opportunity here. So we have the element of surprise, is essentially what the United States said. When you actually take any of these claims that are made and are funded by billions and billions and billions of dollars, whether that comes from Alex Soros or Neveroy Singham from the Chinese Communist Party, influx into the United States. And then when you actually consider, wait a minute, APAC isn't even in the top 15 foreign country focused PACs. Not even didn't make the top 15. All of a sudden, all of those arguments fall apart. And it's the hard data, it's the hard numbers. Because whenever we start playing Clue, but it's not even Clue, it's like emotional junior high rumor Clue. So you're not even hunting anything substantive. Then all of a sudden, it's not even whether or not the argument is anti-Semitic, because it does eventually get there. All of the people who criticize Israel, of course, they never criticize any of the Islamic violence. They never criticize any of the genocides that go on in Africa, Southeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, never, not a single word. It's always surrounding some nefarious plot of the Jews. Oh, excuse me, I mean Israel. And that's always how it flattens. And the moderate position of the Democrat Party now is to say, well, I just don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he's done some things. And when I say, okay, source, show me the data, show me the direct correlative reason, the rationale here that have actually dragged the United States objectively in. The only thing that I get is, well, they said the United States that they were going to go in and do some things, or that they said Iran was going to have a nuclear weapon. We look at the intelligence community reports from our own intelligence assets. We find those things are verified. We find that certain matters like the hacking in 2011, the concerted military action in 2015, the reiterative military action that Obama supported, by the way, in early 2016, that these things occurred, but we don't want to do data. And so a lot of the left side of the aisle right now has spent a considerable amount of time just crafting an emotional narrative that sounds good. And then when the American people reject it, and they see the Democrat Party going further to the left and further into this global South narrative, they'll say, well, you know, I'm just siding with the temperature of the room. People just really don't like the Israeli administration. And if there were any objective data backing that up, I would acknowledge it, but I can't. I don't think the anti-Semitism even comes into that because it's such like an easy card to hold up. I think that it's just kind of emotional, fanciful framing and trying to make qualitative the quantitative.
So, Mike, I would love to have a response from you, but it seems like we're a little bit short on time today, so we'll have to leave it there. But thank you for breaking the news that you're not running for office. Appreciate that. Thank you for the both of you to speak with us. Mike, Tony.
Take care.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Why the Trump administration is withholding more than $1 billion in Medicaid payments. We'll tell you more news after this break. Stay tuned.
Summer should be full of moments like these. But when school doors close, millions of kids lose more than access to the meals they counted on. They lose energy and confidence.
Usually in the summer times, it's a challenge. They're home all day, so we need more food in the house, more snacks in the house, more than normally when they're in school.
Sometimes I just wonder, like, man, are we gonna make it through this week?
Families across America, and right where you live, are facing a summer hunger crisis, stretching every dollar in meal. But costs keep climbing. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to put healthy meals within reach for local families. And your first gift can double an impact.
Having access to a good meal during the summer gives me more energy.
Feeding America is the only nationwide network with over 250 local food banks, food pantries, and meal programs, delivering food where kids already gather. But we can't be there without neighbors like you.
It's like a weight off my shoulders. Without them, my kids wouldn't be fed.
Your gift today will provide more than food. You'll help fuel growth and potential, because summer should help kids move forward, not hold them back.
Your body gets tired and you need the proper stuff to help you get through that.
Please call or go online now. Give $19 a month, and your first gift can double an impact. We'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the food and hope you're delivering.
Them having good meals that are nutritious to help them to concentrate gives me hope for them to have a good future.
It feels really good knowing that my kids have the food that they need. It really puts me at ease and it helps out.
Give now to help local families put food on the table and nourish a stronger future. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your first gift can double an impact.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Gone Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune and GOP Senate leaders spoke to the press after the Senate GOP luncheon. Let's take a look.
By the Democrats is something that also normally is a bipartisan piece of legislation. But none of those things get done if the Democrats continue their posture of trying to block even getting on legislation. And again, I use the defense authorization bill as an example of something that we've done for 65 years in a row, which last week the Democrats decided, even though not many of them, but a number of them had voted for the legislation when it came out of the Armed Services Committee, decided to block its consideration on the floor. So that's something that ought to be able to get done. And then obviously the most important thing that we need to do is to fund the government. And on that front, Chair Susan Collins is working with Democrats on the Appropriations Committee to find a path forward to have a continuing resolution to keep the government funded, to get past the November elections so that we don't have the specter of a government shutdown, something that happened a couple of times this last year. And the disruption, the chaos that creates is just something that both sides ought to be willing to try and avoid. And so I think it's going to be really important that we figure out a path forward to get a bipartisan agreement to fund the government that will keep government open and ensure that government employees are getting paid. And that is something that I intend to bring to the floor for a vote before the August break. Senator Barrasso.
Well, today's Democrat Party is being driven by extremists. It's the extremists who are winning primary elections. Democrats seem to be determined to destroy America. We have a socialist mayor in New York, and one will soon be in the District of Columbia as well. When you take a look at the people that have been winning Democrat primaries this year, there are people who want to defund the police, raise taxes, and open the borders. There are people that want free health care for illegal immigrants paid for by American taxpayers. And they would rather defend and protect illegal immigrant criminals than law-abiding American citizens. We know, according to their manifesto, they want to pack the Supreme Court. They want to put judges in place who will deny the law, defy the Constitution. Their manifesto says that they want to eliminate the Electoral College. They want to eliminate the Senate so that people in the Senate leadership on the Republican side, the people we represent, their voices would be silent. It's so disturbing that one of the nominees for Congress, Democrat nominee, has boasted and posted the fact that when her hands were dirty, she wiped them on the American flag. That's the agenda of these people. They are reckless. They are terrible in terms of what they would do to America. They're extreme, they're dangerous, they're scary. The American people don't want that. The American people demand and deserve better, and Republicans are going to continue to fight for freedom, for liberty, and for continued American greatness.
Leader Thune, good afternoon.
Yep. Good afternoon.
The House seems intent to push ahead with Reconciliation 3.0. You said last week that you were surprised that they were going to do this. Is this just an academic exercise by the House? But once you get that, if you get that, do you genuinely think that you're going to consider that, and when?
Well, we'll see what they get done this week and what it all consists of. I will say that if they give us a budget resolution as a vehicle, we will hold that, subject to obviously being able to move a continuing resolution to fund the government. It's a possibility. that if necessary, we could pull that budget resolution passed by the House and use it to fund government. I hope that's not necessary. As I said, we've had conversations, productive conversations on both sides of the aisle on a funding resolution that would carry us past the November election.
For clarity, hold it until September when you're right up against that? Or
well, we're going to try and get the, as I said earlier, we will get a vote on a continuing resolution to fund the government in this work period. And so, but until that time, in all likelihood, depending on when that happens, when we can get that to pop, and that depends a little bit on cooperation right now, it's possible that would be something that would get punted into September, yeah.
Leader, given the Democrats' being intent on taking down your agenda, divisions in your own party over things like SAVE and deficit spending, and then the loss of working majorities on at least two committees, including appropriations, with the absence of Senator McConnell, the passing of Senator Graham. What is the best that you can hope for, other than just a CO, in getting passed before the November election?
I think that list, as I've said, probably starts with market structure. I think we're nearing. I'm hoping there'll be text available on that yet later today, that we can get that up on the floor. I think the Russia sanctions bill is something, too, that we're sort of homing in on, finalizing final text on that that's available for consideration on the floor. I would say, again, defense authorization, but that's going to be subject to Democrats being willing to let us get on it. But that historically has been a bipartisan thing, and something that all of us, I believe, at least on this side of the aisle, think it's something we ought to be able to get done. And for all the reasons, and we look at the world today, national security ought to be objective and job number one. And for whatever reasons, the Democrats have walked away from that issue. So that's something. And then I would say, there are other things out there, permitting reform, NIL. There are a number of things that, as I said, are candidates for bipartisan legislation. The question is going to be to what level the Democrats want to participate in that. And can we get 60 votes on the floor of the Senate to get some of those things across the finish line? So that's what it's going to come down to.
Initially, the president said that the war would last just a handful of weeks. Now it's been several months, and 3 more service members have died. They're asking for $67 billion in taxpayer money to fund this. Do you think the American public believes that this war is going in the right trajectory? Would you say it is going in the right path?
I think what the president did in response to the Iranians violating the ceasefire was to make it clear that we weren't going to tolerate that. And I think his objective is getting the Strait open. The Iranians are violating international law by blocking the shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. So I think the president has, within his authority, obviously based upon not only the law, but also, I think, based upon the way the Iranians have reacted to the ceasefire and an unwillingness to sit down and actually make a deal, I think the president's actions are designed to force them back to the table. And I hope that that's effective and successful. We all do. And in the meantime, I think most of us, at least, believe that we ought to support our men and women in uniform and hope and pray that they're successful.
But, Leader, do you believe that the administration needs to be more transparent about their plan forward before Congress authorizes additional funding in the hundreds of billions of dollars potentially in a war supplemental?
Well, I think that the supplemental obviously isn't just about Iran. The supplemental is about replacing munitions, and there was a need for that well before. Well, a lot of it well before Iran. But let's assume your premise. I think that that is the area in which we have some control over issues like this. And the power of the purse, the ability of the Congress to weigh in on matters like this. But the request that they've submitted, I think, is something that most of our colleagues are going to be willing to support. There are some concerns about whether or not it'll be offset, whether or not it'll be paid for. There are concerns, some of our colleagues are going to be about is it enough? And, the level that's been requested by the administration. So we will have those discussions if and when we can get a bill like that on the floor. Right now, I don't know when that happens, but I know there's a sincere interest on our side in trying to accommodate the need that our military has to be prepared to face any kind of threat that we face around the world.
Leader, could I ask, while you have Chairman Cotton here for an update on Jay Clayton's nomination, whether you guys anticipate getting him through before the August recess, and FISA as well, the reauthorization with the status of all that?
The committee just voted to move Mr. Clayton's nomination to the Senate, to the full Senate.
What was the vote on that? Was that a party line vote?
9-8.
Leader Thune, Senator Fetterman has indicated that if Democrats officially become anti-Israel, he would leave the party. Have you had any conversations with him about maybe joining the GOP conference, and would you welcome him if he were to offer that?
Yes, we would welcome him. That's what it was. I haven't talked to him recently. I have had conversations with him in the past, as have many of my colleagues, about the challenges he faces in his caucus. And, you know, there are many of us who I think would welcome the opportunity to have him join the Republican conference. But, you know, ultimately that's a decision that's up to him. And as Senator Barrasso pointed out in his remarks, I mean, this is a party that's moving further and further, more radically, and to the more extreme left on a lot of issues. And I think people like John Fetterman, who have views that probably reflect a more moderate, or at least historically moderate, Democrat position, are really kind of people without a home. So if he ever comes to the conclusion that he's ready to move, we would certainly welcome it. Thank you.
And you were just watching Senate Majority Leader John Thune talking to the press after the Senate GOP luncheon, and he was answering reporter questions on a range of issues. And I'll just highlight one, a couple of them, actually. So he was saying the Democratic Party has been moving further and further to the far extreme left. And if certain moderate Democrats wants a home in the Republican Party, he would certainly welcome it. And on the Iran war, John Thune said that it is within President Trump's authority to respond to Iran after how they violated the ceasefire agreement, and it is in accordance with law. All right, let's move on from there. The state of New Jersey has found some 6,600 non-citizens on its voter rolls. Governor Mikey Sherrill says under 400 of them voted illegally.
In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state. When New Jerseyans applied for a driver's license or identification at the MVC, they were asked if they wanted to register to vote. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
The governor says the software error was corrected in June 2024, but it's unclear which elections may have been impacted. It's also unclear if the Murphy administration knew about the error. She calls the whole situation unacceptable and says her administration has launched a comprehensive investigation. New Jersey is currently working to remove anyone who is illegally registered from the voter rolls. The state is also ditching the software vendor in question, IDEMIA, and transitioning to another vendor. The governor promises that she will treat election integrity seriously, ensure accountability, and prevent something like this from happening again. The Trump administration considers sanctions as Chinese AI models gain ground and concerns grow over the theft of American technology. More news after this break. Don't go away.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers. He connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
How'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
U.S. and Mexican trade negotiators are starting three-day talks aimed at revisiting the North American trade agreement. This just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on most goods from Canada. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the story.
U.S. representatives are meeting with Mexico.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration is weighing sanctions on China over AI model theft. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Fox News this morning.
We are finding watermarks of our U.S. large language models on many of the Chinese models, and that's unacceptable, Maria. So we're going to be looking at that in the coming days or weeks. But again, the U.S. government supports open source, but what we do not support is IP theft.
Bessent says the U.S. has the ability to sanction overseas AI models if they are stealing from American companies. His remarks come as Chinese open-weight AI models are gaining traction. A Chinese startup recently released a new model called Kimi K3. It outperforms major U.S. AI companies across some industry benchmarks. Anthropic recently alleged to a separate panel that Chinese tech giant Alibaba carried out dissolution against its AI model. The U.S. and China are set to hold AI talks in September, where Bessent will lead the U.S. delegation. U.S. and Mexican trade negotiators are starting three-day talks aimed at revising the North American trade agreement. This just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff from most goods from Canada. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the story.
U.S. representatives are meeting with Mexican counterparts this week, kicking off negotiations surrounding the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. This marks the first formal discussions on changes to the agreement since the U.S. declined its extension earlier this month. Washington says the U.S. will leave the agreement within 10 years unless the three countries can agree on improvements, mostly to lower the unfair trade deficit. The start of the talks with Mexico comes just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on most goods from Canada. Trade Representative Jameson Greer on Tuesday telling CNBC the new tariffs come in response to Canada retaliating against President Trump's so-called Liberation Day. That's when the president imposed reciprocal tariffs in April of last year, shortly after taking office.
Of all the countries who retaliated against the United States, one was the People's Republic of China and the other was Canada.
Some of the things they did is they banned the sale of U.S. liquor and other booze on Canadian shelves.
This graph shows the example Greer made. On the left, you will see that the U.S. exported almost $500 million worth of wine in 2024. A year later, it was at only around $100 million. And we see similar decreases with distilled spirits and beers. Greer says unfair trade practices have also affected the auto industry, dairy, and more.
And so we have a tailored action that covers a subset of Canadian goods. We aren't banning the goods like the Canadians have banned American alcohol. We're not putting a cap on them or limiting them like they've done to cars and dairy, but we have a tariff.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney saying he's now open to discuss the current situation.
I spoke with President Trump earlier this morning. We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks.
Carney says he wants to find a solution that works for the U.S. and for Canada. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Police pursuits, unexpected landings, and breathtaking sights, all from a different point of view. Tell you more after the break. Stay tuned.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality. A timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjiong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Appliances break down, home systems fail, which means I show up at everyone's door because I'm inevitable.
Unfortunately, something expensive is about to happen.
Is it the heat, plumbing, electrical, wiring, garage door, oven?
But we already have homeowners insurance. Actually, home insurance is for the unexpected disasters. A home warranty is for the everyday wear and tear that will cause your home systems and appliances to fail. So give the people at First American a call.
First American has had my back for years. It saved me hundreds. Just one call, and they send a pre-screened, qualified contractor.
Every home system and appliance fails. There's absolutely no avoiding it. But when the day comes, First American has you covered. Home breakdowns are inevitable, but the expense, that's optional.
Call First American for a free quote that could save you thousands on inevitable home breakdowns. Call 800-423-1231 or visit FAHW.com.
Finding the perfect living room just got a whole lot easier. Come to Mathis Home where you have the freedom to save on everything for your home. Check out these luxurious sofas. We've dropped the price to just $9.99. Big on comfort and big on fashion, all at incredible savings. With so many looks to choose from, you're sure to find one that's perfect for you. All specially priced to just $9.99. In stock now with fast, free delivery. Freedom of choice, freedom of comfort, and freedom to save at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
A young family in Australia has welcomed 4 identical baby girls in a rare birth. Doctors believe it may be the first naturally conceived pregnancy of its kind in the country. Here's that story.
Too tiny for their parents' arms just yet, these 4 little girls are proof the rarest beginnings can have the brightest futures.
They have come from one fertilised egg that is split 4 times, which is
incredible.
Occurring in just 1 in 15 million pregnancies, it's an Australian first and one of only a few cases worldwide.
To share a placenta just means that splitting has happened relatively late in the embryo life, so exceptionally rare.
Parents Janita and Jotham already had 4 kids, rolling the dice one more time.
When they found out that they had 4 babies instead of 1, they were quite shocked.
The pregnancy extremely complex.
And there is a high risk of mortality and morbidity for these babies and for mum.
But thanks to the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital, Emily, Harriet, Alexa and Catherine were safely delivered by C-section at 28 weeks, each weighing just over a kilogram. From mum, one little hand, one giant miracle. Every day our miracle babies grow stronger is another answered prayer. We love you more than words can ever say.
Long term, their outlook will be really good.
Meanwhile, a suspect ended up above the law, but only momentarily when a vehicle they were fleeing ended up on top of a police pursuing car. Here's what happened.
Watch an Atlanta area police pursuit go from this to this. A joint law enforcement effort to apprehend a suspect wanted on drug charges kicked off a brief chase that didn't go far. Sandy Springs police say once the suspect vehicle took off, it struck a concrete barrier, lifting its rear end up and landing on the pursuing patrol car. The suspect then tried to flee on foot, but again, didn't get far. The department said he was apprehended without further incident. Remember, no one is above the law, even if you happen to end up above the law. From above is where a surreal situation stemmed in Texas, where KTRK reports a small plane attempting to land on a nearby airstrip clearly missed its mark, instead coming to land on top of a nearby house. The pilot was reportedly treated for minor injuries. No one was reported hurt inside the home, which, amazingly enough, is located on Kitty Hawk Street. You know, Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers. Read a book, kids. Finally, the view from the air up there can be quite fair if you've got the artistic chops to back it up. Take a look at some of the winners from the 2026 International Aerial Photographer of the Year competition. More than 1,500 entries from around the world were whittled down to winners for Best Photographer and Photograph, as well as categories like Above Water, Mountains, and Snow. It just goes to show you don't necessarily have to go far to capture breathtaking bird's-eye views. You just have to go up. More winners and finalist submissions can be viewed in the ebook at internationalaerialphotographer.com.
Those are some nice pictures. I would love to have one for my wallpaper on my phone, by the way. But that aside, 2 Republican and 1 Democrat senators are before the Senate Appropriations Committee to discuss President Trump's supplemental funding request. Let's take a look.
Senator Rounds, Senator Budd.
Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon to provide a voice for the people in Western North Carolina. More than 21 months ago, Hurricane Helene unleashed an unprecedented amount of rainfall on the Blue Ridge Mountains, causing severe flooding and devastating landslides. The storm left behind tens of billions in damage. In December 2024, Congress responded by approving a disaster supplemental that provided billions of dollars to Western North Carolina recovery. Additionally, North Carolina's state government stepped up by committing roughly $2.4 billion in state appropriations and redirecting more than $2 billion from state agencies for reconstruction. But the Blue Ridge Mountains' challenging terrain has made it uniquely difficult for federal programs to operate, resulting in delays and inefficiencies. And there's still work to be done. Too many projects in Western North Carolina have stalled due to insufficient funding or because of financial shortfalls from expensive debris removal and rebuilding efforts. I greatly appreciate that President Trump and Secretary Mullen have empowered FEMA to more rapidly reimburse the state and local governments for public assistance projects. However, FEMA is only one part of the equation. The Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and other federal agencies play a key role in disaster recovery. And much of the existing disaster funding for those agencies has already largely been allocated. When I visit Western North Carolina, I see the impacts the delays in recovery have caused. Debris still clogs the waterways, Facilities that provide drinking water and manage wastewater have yet to be rebuilt. Most concerning, some homeowners are paying mortgages on properties that are still unlivable or yet to be rebuilt. Towns have been forced to embrace expensive short-term stopgap solutions just to carry out their most basic functions for their residents. In the small town of Beach Mountain, there is no long-term water supply. The dam and water treatment plant were heavily damaged, forcing the town out of compliance with state safety standards. And as a result, the state could be finding Beach Mountain $25,000 per day. Most repairs are needed so that the water treatment plant can function long-term. If funded, this process will take at least a year and require significant diversion of utilities and/or daily water trucks just so hundreds of residents will have to have clean drinking water during construction. 3 years is too long to wait after a disaster, and we can't delay any longer. Tourism, the lifeblood of much of Western North Carolina, has begun to rebound, but there's still far too many areas that are unable to accommodate the travelers they once welcomed. But I want to highlight a few examples of success stories to show how ample funding for the last disaster supplemental, paired with exceptional planning and project execution, made an immediate impact on our mountain communities. Last July, portions of the Blue Ridge Parkway reopened after 57 landslides struck 200 miles of the parkway. This Memorial Day weekend, Lake Lure reopened to the public after an incredible debris removal and refilling project. And I want to be clear that I fully support President Trump's request to replenish our munitions stockpile and strengthen our military. And I'm also appreciative of his efforts to provide economic assistance to farmers impacted by disasters and unfair trade practices. However, to address the long-term recovery needs of Western North Carolina, more federal funds are needed. Every time I'm in Western North Carolina, people ask me to make sure that they're not forgotten. This is Congress's chance to remind them that we're serious about helping them get back on their feet. I'm deeply grateful to the members of the committee for holding this hearing, and I look forward to continuing to work with you throughout this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Budd. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Murray, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of the people of California, and especially the survivors of last year's devastating fires in Los Angeles County. And I want to acknowledge that some of them are here in the audience today advocating for relief, and I'm proud to work alongside them. As many of you recall, 18 months ago, 60,000 acres across Southern California burned. That's roughly 3.5 times the size of Manhattan. Over 16,000 homes, businesses, schools, and other structures were destroyed. And most devastatingly, 31 Californians lost their lives. To respond, more than 7,500 firefighters worked literally around the clock for more than 3 weeks to extinguish the fires. And those firefighters weren't just from California. Many came from our neighboring states of Oregon, Washington, Arizona, some as far away as Utah, Texas, and Montana. Colleagues, because as Americans, that's what we do. We help each other. We don't condition our response based on who a community voted for in the last election. When Americans need help, we help. Now, walking around the Palisades and the Altadena communities during the fires and after the fires, you couldn't help but be moved by the scale of the devastation, the images of nothing standing but a chimney amongst a pile of ash, cars literally melted into the streets or the drivers where they had been parked. In the wake of disasters like this, Congress has historically come together on a bipartisan basis to provide aid and long-term recovery funding to help communities recover and rebuild, regardless of whether the disaster was in a state represented by Republicans or Democrats. But instead of following that historical practice, this administration has left California waiting for more than 1.5 years, while asking Congress to fund hundreds of billions of dollars for other purposes. I want to be crystal clear. No disaster-impacted community, regardless of where it is located, should ever be held hostage or treated as a bargaining chip for other political priorities. Californians in Altadena and the Palisades have now waited more than 18 months. Yet long-term recovery funding is still absent from even the administration's request. Instead, it asks taxpayers to spend hundreds of billions of dollars more on a war that Congress has never authorized, a war that's raising gas prices, worsening supply chains, making our country less safe, and for which 17 service members have already paid the ultimate sacrifice, with many more seriously injured. Now, we know this committee can address disaster relief without tying it to a laundry list of unrelated priorities because it's done so many times before, including as recently as December 2024, when the committee on a bipartisan basis passed more than $100 billion of relief. There's no reason we can't do it again. Colleagues, we must reject the premise that it is okay to keep survivors waiting for help because the president, any president, decides they need something else from Congress to get it. To that end, I do want to thank my colleagues, Senators Tillis, Schiff, and Curtis, for joining me in sending a bipartisan letter to the committee just yesterday, supporting long-term disaster recovery funding. Madam Chair, I'd like to enter this letter into the record at this time.
Thank you, Senator Padilla.
I'm not done. I just want to enter the letter to the record.
Without objection,
thank you.
It will be.
And I'll be wrapping up soon here. I also want to reiterate what I said earlier. We know the next disaster is coming. Anyone who stepped outside of Washington this last weekend or across at least a dozen states saw and breathed the very impacts of wildfires. And it may be Canada now, but it's going to be one of our states next. As of last week, the federal government has already spent over $3.3 billion in wildfire suppression this fiscal year, even though the peak of fire season is August and September. That's still ahead of us. That should concern the committee. We cannot allow wildfire suppression funding to run out before the end of the fiscal year. So in addition to the long-term disaster recovery funding, I urge the committee to examine the need for emergency suppression funds as well. And I would note that the Fire Fix, which has provided a steady resource for fighting wildfires, will expire in fiscal year 2027. Congress needs to extend and increase that funding to ensure firefighters have all the resources they need to respond to the ever-growing threat of wildfires. I'll close by reiterating what I said at the outset. Disasters do not distinguish between red states and blue states. And when it comes to disaster aid, neither should Congress. So thank you again for holding this hearing and allowing me to be a voice for my constituents and for disaster survivors across the country. I look forward to working with this committee to ensure that everyone has the resources and support that they need to recover and rebuild, regardless of which state they call home. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the testimony of the entire panel as we consider the supplemental submitted by the administration. Your testimony is very helpful to us. Thank you. I will now ask that our second panel of witnesses come forward. Well, leave it to our military witness to be on time. While we are waiting for our second panel to be seated, let me introduce them. We are joined today by the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane. These administration officials represent the largest components of the administration's request, and we welcome them to the committee today. Secretary Hegseth, we will begin with your testimony. Please proceed.
Well, Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, members of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, thank you for the opportunity to testify on President Trump's supplemental funding request for the Department of War. As you know, we live in a dangerous world that requires bold and swift action. Hence, this supplemental request for fiscal year 2026. This request is an urgent, necessary injection of resources to address the immediate needs of our department. The supplemental funding request is not a substitute.
The witness will suspend until order is restored in the committee room. I know that individuals feel very passionately, but we must have order in the hearing room so that we can proceed. We're now going to move forward with our hearing, and Secretary Hegseth, please proceed.
Thank you. The supplemental funding request is not a substitute for the President's full $1.5 trillion base budget request. $1.5 trillion.
Mr. Secretary, please suspend until order is restored in the hearing room. We will begin the timing clock since you've been interrupted twice.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
$1.5 trillion is what the President seeks and what we need to defend the country. The members of this committee understand better than most that long-term strategic dominance cannot be funded through one-off supplementals.
We will have order in the hearing room. Mr. Secretary, please proceed.
Collectively, the budget proposals submitted under President Trump follow a simple logic.
I would ask that the Capitol Police, whose professionalism I admire, remove those who are seeking to disrupt the hearing. Please proceed.
President Trump's following a simple logic. The military requires a generational investment to deliver on peace through strength. We know the best way to create peace is to prepare for war, to deter it. And that's exactly what the Department of War is doing, building a force so capable that it would be absurd for anyone to challenge it. As the direct result of neglected priorities and gross negligence that ignored threats left over from the previous administration, President Trump inherited a set of global and domestic crises, deferred maintenance almost across the board. Instead of steering the ship through gathering storms, former leaders let our military languish through social experiments and globalist appeasement, sheer weakness. Under President Trump, we have built a different type of department. The Pentagon is no longer run by bureaucrats. Instead, it's led by combat-tested veterans and world-class business leaders who are running the department like a business, and tech titans who are bringing lethal innovation to the battlefield. We're also at a different moment, and we cannot afford inaction. If we don't make critical investments right now in tech, in compute, in AI, in autonomy, in space, our adversaries who are already making these types of investments could outpace us. Without these funds, we face critical shortfalls that threaten our ability to also simply pay our service members, rapidly replenish equipment and munitions, and sustain vital operations without disruption. This supplemental request serves two purposes: sustain our military readiness to meet this year's new demands, and accelerate critical capabilities to replace and augment those we have used in contingencies. But make no mistake, this is not a one-for-one replacement. We are upgrading and we are modernizing across the force. On the readiness front, we requested $21 billion. This will fund military pay, replace much of the equipment utilized during recent operations, sustain forward deployed forces, and grow personnel and strength while stabilizing mission-critical fueled shortfalls and supporting the National Guard. On the capabilities side, we requested $46 billion. These funds will expand production lines and accelerate delivery of high-demand munitions. We're talking about solid rocket motors, JDAMs, hypersonics, and counter-drone capabilities. Additionally, we will use this investment to secure digital and space dominance, including resilient satellite networks. Department leadership recognizes that appropriating those funds is just the first step. Once funds are appropriated, or apportioned, to the department, we need to promptly execute on them. And that's why we're requesting targeted legislative authorities, like transfer authority, to prioritize our greatest needs and opportunities, multi-year procurement for weapon systems, revolutionizing the speed and scale of munitions procurement, and New START authorities. Rest assured that every dollar appropriated to the Department of War will be focused on building the lethality of our joint force and reinforcing peace through strength. As I have said before, not fully funding this department, the Department of War, and we know what that means, that means $1.5 trillion, given the world that we live in and the disaster of what the Biden administration budgets gave us. Not funding this department at $1.5 trillion, I believe, is the greatest threat that our nation faces. Either we invest in our warriors at this moment of step change on the battlefield and growing threats, or this is all just talk. I look forward to working with this committee to secure those funds so that our warfighters can continue to do their work every day to keep our great republic safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General Kane.
Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, distinguished members of this committee, I'm honored today to appear before you with Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rollins to testify on the Department of War's fiscal 2026 supplemental funding request. And I'll note I fondly remember my time at USDA earlier in my career where I had the chance to serve there. I'm also joined today by my senior enlisted advisor, SEAC Dave Isom. As always, I'm deeply grateful for this committee's continued partnership and support for our common defense. I'd like to begin by expressing my deep condolences and that of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the SEAC for the fallen from this past weekend and their families. Today, we remember First Lieutenant Tyler Feehan, Sergeant Michael Swinton, and Private Isabel Gonzalez, and note that the names of our last fallen will be released when we can. I'm humbled daily by the profound commitment of the incredible 2.8 million Americans, just like these names that I've just mentioned, who make up our joint force and serve our nation every day. Also, on behalf of the Joint Force and the Joint Chiefs, I want to express my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the family of Senator Graham for their loss and all of you for the loss of your colleague. The Joint Force remains grateful for his 44 years of service, both in and out of uniform. There is no doubt he made a difference to the safety and security of our nation. On July 22nd, 1940, General George C. Marshall said, and I quote, "For almost 20 years, we had all of the time and almost none of the money. Today, we have all of the money and no time." His words resonate powerfully with me today as we find ourselves in a somewhat similar situation. I've come to you today to request the necessary funds while in the window of opportunity, while time is still on our side. The The United States of America faces a global list of military challenges in the Middle East, in Europe, in the Pacific, both nuclear and non-nuclear challenges, and the continued threat of terrorism. We find ourselves living and leading in complex and dynamic times. Our adversaries are aligning in their interests, creating simultaneous challenges across multiple domains. They are sharing intelligence, combat capabilities, and technology that is accelerating the speed of war. It is an imperative that Americans understand that the character of war is changing. Advances in technology are fundamentally and irreversibly changing the way we fight, which necessitates capital to properly arm America's military. Rapid advancements in AI, autonomous systems, deliver critical technological advantages to our national defense and simultaneously introduce unprecedented strategic vulnerabilities and uncertainty across the world, to include right here at home. The low barrier to entry created by affordable, ubiquitous, unmanned systems means our adversaries, rogue actors, state and non-state actors, and violent extremists have access to disruptive and potentially lethal technologies at scale. We've seen this in Ukraine, and we must adopt elements of this fight for our future fights. Conflict is never confined neatly to the land, sea, or air domains. The modern battlefield stretches from the seabed up to cislunar space and beyond, cyberspace, and in the information domain, all at the same time. Our nation must be prepared to fight and win across all of them, all the time, all at once. In addition, the light speed at which information travels now has compressed our leaders' decision space, taking what was once days or weeks in World War II down to milliseconds. Your joint force must be ready because the United States military is America's greatest insurance policy. And I acknowledge all of us find it difficult at times to pay for insurance before we need it. But we must have insurance before the storm comes. The Armed Forces of the United States of America serves as our nation's ultimate safeguard and our insurance policy to preserve, protect, and defend our national interests, security, and prosperity. To uphold this responsibility, we require predictable and consistent funding. This will allow us to partner effectively with our defense and national industrial bases, building on acquisition reforms that guarantee our warfighters receive capabilities at scale before they are required in conflict or combat. I'm struck by this season of American history we find ourselves in, and I continue to ask myself, if not now, then when? And if not us in this room and the rest of the Congress and the nation, then who? I acknowledge the environment we all serve in, but always remember that we are all Americans with deep and abiding love of our nation and our military service members and their families. I've come today to ask for your help and your support. America's armed forces need $1.5 trillion to meet the military challenges of the future. This supplemental is a part of that, and to be allowed to use this capital to pay for military personnel, operations and maintenance expenses, and accelerate investments on critical technologies, as the Secretary just mentioned. It is critical that we stay ahead of our adversaries, and we must have the funds before we're out of time. In closing, I ask all of us to remember our deployed service members around the world right now, especially our Army teammates who remain deployed after losing their friends and teammates this past weekend. And I again ask all of us here in the Senate and across the American people to never forget our fallen and their families who continue to show us what courage, tenacity, grit, and commitment to the nation looks like. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Secretary Rollins.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Collins, Ranking Member Murray, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Let me begin with the bottom line up front. the United States Department of Agriculture is joining today the United States Department of War in a fight for America and for American flourishing. After all, defending America's ability to feed and fuel and clothe herself is defending America, full stop. This can be easily forgotten. For centuries, we built farms and ranches and transportation that fed not only America, but the world too. For a long time, that prosperity made America strong and made America safe. But across the past 100 years, and especially across the last administration, we took that source of strength in war and peace, our farms and our ranches, and the communities that surrounded them, and we hollowed them out. We made them weak, and we put them on the precipice of decline and extinction. We sent our food production overseas. In fact, 2023 was for the first time a significant net importer of our food for America. And in so doing, we replaced American production with massive amounts of imports. We allowed and even encouraged the consolidation of agriculture, seed production, processing, fertilizer, and beyond into massive industries at scale. Today, nearly 85% of our meat packing capacity is controlled by just 4 companies, including 2 that are foreign-owned. Additionally, our largest pork company in America is owned by a China company, or China. 4 fertilizer companies now represent 78% of the production versus just a couple of decades ago, that was in the dozens. And 2 seed companies now produce more than 50% of the seed for America. These are national security implications. When President Trump returned to office, America's farm economy faced one of the most difficult economic environments in decades. Between 2020 and 2025, the cost of seed rose 19%, crop protection rose 30%, fertilizer rose over 50%, fuel and oils rose nearly 33%, electricity 36%, and repair and maintenance 27%. As these costs climbed, commodity prices plummeted. Farm income fell by more than $90 billion from 2023 to 2024, representing one of the largest single-year declines in history. At the same time, producers saw not one new trade deal across the world, resulting in an unprecedented $50 billion agricultural trade deficit. American farmers deserve better, and our national security now demands it. As long as we are beholden to foreign and even hostile countries for our food and our fuel, our freedom is in jeopardy. Since my first day at USDA, we have been committed to addressing this crisis head on. In addition to implementing the historic working families tax cuts, thanks to so many in this room who worked so hard, moving $40 billion in disaster and economic assistance to producers across the country, securing 19 new trade deals, and decreasing that $50 billion agricultural trade deficit in 1 year by 42%. This year, our corn exports are expected to be at a record-breaking 35%, ethanol up 11%, dairy up 15%, and tree nuts up 11%. We are making progress, but we have a ways to go. Administrator Zeldin has secured the strongest renewable fuel standard volumes in history, and the President continues to support year-round E15 for our domestic markets. We have led robust responses to animal health threats, including HPAI and the New World screwworm, and have reduced unnecessary regulatory burdens and partnered with producers to strengthen the domestic demand for American agriculture. These are lasting reforms and will change the trajectory of American agriculture for the future. The trade agreements will take time to fully execute and generate even more exports. The biofuel investments take time to increase the demand for American crops, although we're already seeing a 10% increase since just an announcement a month ago. And of course, onshoring facilities like fertilizer will continue to take some time to build out. But we are confident that the direction of American agriculture is changing for the better. But many producers continue to face economic pressure as we build that economic infrastructure out. Specialty crop growers across the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Pacific Northwest, and Florida suffered devastating freeze losses this past winter. Producers across the plains continue recovering from catastrophic wildfire and events occurring while many operations are still working to catch up financially. That is why our proposal includes $10 billion in temporary economic assistance for 2026 row crop and specialty crop producers, and also includes $1.1 billion to help producers recover from catastrophic freeze losses suffered this past winter. Congress has taken similar action over many decades, and we're so grateful for that, but including most recently 2023 and 2024 with economic aid and disaster relief aid with the hurricane seasons. I want to be 100% clear as I close. For the sake of American national security, American existence, and the American future, we must, in the long run, end this system that has grown up like a weed and strangled the American farmland and food production. Farmers want to farm for their products, not for a government check. They want to be free from dependency and free to innovate. We know what happens when they are able to do that. They build and feed the greatest republic in the history of man. But when they aren't, well, we know the danger that we are in today. But that's why this supplemental is so important. It provides a bridge and extends a hand to Americans who need it. It buys the nation the security that we need, and it buys us time to deconstruct and then reconstruct a new system, putting our farmers and ranchers first, and to restore the system that originally made America great. For our farmers, the defense of American freedom continues. They only ask to be free to fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now begin with questions for our witnesses. As you can see, we have a very full attendance of committee members today, so I would ask that all of our colleagues to please keep track of the clock and stay within the allotted 5-minute question time. With that, let me begin. Secretary Hegseth, General Kane. Members on both sides of the aisle have questions about the authorization strategy, objectives, and conduct of operations in the Middle East. Regardless of our differing views, the fact remains that there are must-pay bills and urgent requirements facing the department that affect the ability of our military to deter and defend against potential aggression worldwide. Portions of the supplemental request go toward paying these bills and are necessary to restore readiness, repair, or replace battle damage to aircraft, ships, or bases, and address urgent munitions challenges. I understand and am told that some military services face near-term solvency challenges. What will be the impact on our troops if additional funding is not provided? Are there military exercises, for example, that are at risk of cancellation? What message will we be sending to the world? Secretary Hegseth, either you or Senator or General Kane.
Chairwoman, I very much appreciate that question, and it's because it's connected to the real-world realities of this budget cycle. There is training right now and training in the future that would have to be curtailed if we do not get our budget needs met and met urgently. And yes, some of that has to do with the current budget cycle and how things come together. But we are a department that for 4 years met funding shortfalls under the previous administration. It was not a priority to fund the Department of Defense under Joe Biden. It also took the munitions and a lot of there were 5 supplementals out of this committee that took munitions one for one and sent them to Ukraine and had tried to replace them with the same bureaucratic process that was too slow and didn't replace them in real time. And then there were threats that were ignored around the world. So you're looking at a lot of negligence and a lot of deferred maintenance that this department is having to catch up on. And so that's why I call this a generational investment. It truly is. This is $1.5 trillion budget with this supplemental being part of it, is how we catch up and get ahead and ensure in the process we're putting soldiers and sailors and airmen first, Marines first, Guardians, that their pay increases, that the end strength increases that have gone up because recruiting is at historic levels are fully funded. So rather than trying to play catch up and make sure we're not losing training, we should be ahead of that curve. And that's where we think 1.5 trillion can get us.
Thank you. Senator Kaine, Senator, I keep calling you Senator, General Kaine, I'm going to ask you to respond for the record because in my remaining time, I do want to ask Secretary Rollins a question. Secretary Rollins, as we heard from the previous panel, our country has many outstanding recovery needs from disasters and other related, weather-related events over the past 2 years. As this chart shows, and this is a chart from your department, many have unmet weather-related agricultural losses. In Maine, many of our producers are struggling amid a combination of market volatility and disaster conditions last year, which included excessive rainfall in the spring, followed by a severe drought. They need relief. Yet the administration's supplemental request does not include funding to address these recovery needs. It does have $1.1 billion to help Florida agricultural producers rebound from a severe freeze this past winter, but nothing for prior disasters in other states. Can you explain USDA's thinking behind focusing your request just on the 2026 freeze rather than on the 2025 disaster declarations that you made?
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. Obviously, the discussions that went on over at OMB and with our teams continue, but what I will say is we are obviously 100% in support of any sort of disaster relief program for our farmers, whether it's hurricane, tornado, drought, freeze, et cetera. So look forward to working with you on that and specifically understanding the larger context here that there's a lot of farmers, a lot of producers who are really hurting, not just in Florida and not just from the freeze. So it's important that we work together to solve for that.
Thank you. Senator Murray.
Thank you, Chair Collins. Secretary Hegseth, your department received $150 billion last year in the Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill. It also received a record $839 billion for fiscal year 2026, more money than you asked for last year. Combined, that is $1 trillion budget for the year, and as I already mentioned, your department has yet to spend half of the reconciliation funds. And despite that, you are here today asking for tens of billions of dollars more for things that you've already asked for in your FY27 request or that have nothing to do with Iran. This administration has tried to sell this as an emergency request, but it may be better understood as an attempt to skirt the normal appropriations process. Here are just a few of the things requested in this Iran supplemental. $800 million for the National Guard to patrol D.C. even longer. Over $1 billion for the Army to patrol the southern border, which is DHS's job, $900 million to support the administration's illegal boat strikes in the Caribbean, over $18 billion for munitions, which you've already requested in your FY27 budget request, and $1.7 billion to pay for your decision to recruit more people than the services need, which was not contemplated by the FY26 funding bill Congress recently passed. Now, you've already submitted a reprogramming request on this that our subcommittee is considering now, which really underscores the point I made in my opening remarks that the problem is not a lack of money, but poor planning. So I'll be blunt. The truth is your request does not make a lot of sense. So let me ask you a simple question. Why exactly are billions of dollars more for the National Guard and this administration's illegal strikes in the Caribbean urgently needed for the Iran war?
Well, Senator, I wouldn't, of course, agree with your characterization, but why this kind of spending is needed is because of the gross negligence and neglect of the Biden administration inside our department. Ran it like a bureaucracy, abandoned our strength posture around the world, so we're having to reestablish deterrence. You mentioned the end strength numbers, and I will acknowledge that we are ahead of schedule on end strength in recruiting. 8,000 in the Navy, 6,000 in the Army, 4,000 in the Air Force. Because under President Trump, there's been record and historic over 30-year recruiting records inside our department since he won the election, because the American people didn't want to sign up for what Joe Biden was providing our military.
Let me
and they want to sign up for what President Trump is doing in his leadership. And so those are good problems to have that we need to fund, and a reflection of momentum. And this budget will allow us to continue the kind of momentum that gets us ahead.
My point is that a lot of this request does not feel like an emergency. And let me move on. Secretary Hegseth, like most Americans, I've had a lot of trouble following this administration's contradictory statements about the war. On April 8th, you said, and I quote, "Their missile program is functionally destroyed, launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated and almost completely ineffective." Mr. Secretary, Iran has been firing at U.S. military bases in the region and its ships for the last week. How is it possible, if their capabilities were, quote, functionally destroyed 3 months earlier, as she claimed, for them to be doing this now?
Well, Senator, Iran is at the weakest point militarily it has ever been in the past decade. Certainly, maybe in 47 years, as they've gathered effectively a terror army. And that terror army was built to try to create conventional capabilities to defend against a pursuit of nuclear weapons, which meant thousands of ballistic missiles, many of which we have destroyed, others of which they have put inside facilities and hidden in underground facilities, and that's what terror regimes would do. So I acknowledge they still have capabilities, no doubt, but the amount of damage that we've done to them over the course of these series of operations has put them in the worst place they've ever been.
Okay, well, let me move on. On May 5th, you claimed that Iran doesn't control the strait, and you said that there was a, quote, powerful red, white, and blue dome over the strait. If that was true, how did Iran shrink ship traffic in the strait to a trickle again last week?
We pushed almost, I believe, between 400 and 500 million barrels of oil under the nose of Iran over the course of Project Freedom, which went underground, which I acknowledged after we did so covertly, because it was more effective to do so quietly than to do so publicly. So we've been in control of moving traffic through there for quite some time. Will they retain the ability to recklessly shoot at commercial shipping? And that's what happened. We had a ceasefire, and then they shot at commercial shipping
well, you
recklessly
also
as a state.
said at
That's
that
what changed
same press conference, and I'm going to quote you, you urged Iran to, quote, let innocent ships pass freely. These international waters belong to all nations, not to Iran to tax, toll, or control. Last week, President Trump said the U.S. would charge a 20% toll to each ship to pass through the state. So based on your opposition to tolls, did you talk to the president out of that idea, or did someone else?
Iran's not charging tolls, and they're shooting at ships right now.
But Trump said that he wanted to charge a 20% toll.
We have a blockade right now of all Iranian ships and Iranian ports, and it's effective.
My time is out.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you all for being here. Challenging times, I think we all recognize that. Secretary Hegseth, I want to ask, just specific to Iran authorization, the administration has made the case that the action in Iran falls under the President's Article 2 authorities, and we can have disagreement. Reasonable people can disagree about the boundaries of the presidential war powers, and have for a long period of time. But I look at the War Powers Resolution, and it's not ambiguous. It requires the President to terminate hostilities within 60 days, absent congressional authorization. So hostilities began February 28th. May 1st, Congress was informed that hostilities had ended, but yet despite the fact that hostilities had ended, we were still seeing sailors being fired upon still activity. Then in June, an MOU is signed to preserve the ceasefire while negotiations continue. That MOU has now collapsed, and we are seeing the resumed attacks in the Straits of Hormuz. On July 10, the administration sends Congress a new war powers notification, effectively restarting, the 60-day clock again. So I'm concerned about this sequence, because you have a situation where the claim essentially allows the president to extinguish the war powers clock just at the moment that it becomes legally inconvenient through declaration of temporary ceasefire. Then it's reset, avoiding the congressional authorization that the Constitution requires and the war powers intends. So we had an opportunity in previous appropriations hearing for me to ask if you felt the administration had all the authority that it needed. You indicated at that time that no, additional authority was not needed. Are you still, is the administration still taking that position about needing no authorization from Congress at this time?
Senator, I know there's a long-standing legal debate on this particular topic, but we certainly as a department share the position of the White House that we have all the authorities necessary at this moment.
So let me just kind of do a follow-on. In the Clinton administration, this is 1999, there was an operation that was launched, Operation Allied Force, NATO airstrikes against Yugoslavia. There was not a prior congressional authorization that was sought. President Clinton notified Congress under the War Powers Resolution, and then subsequent to that, sent Congress an emergency supplemental funding request. It was about $6 billion to cover the cost of Kosovo operations. Congress then passed a supplemental package that covered the president's request plus additional military funding. But Congress never passed a standalone authorization for use of military force in Kosovo. When the war powers clock was set to run out then in May of 1999, the Clinton Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel issued an opinion holding that the supplemental appropriation itself, passed without any authorizing language, satisfied the War Powers Resolution requirement. So is the department looking to that or intending to rely on that same reasoning that funding alone can substitute for explicit congressional authorization?
Senator, I would have to defer to our legal department, and we'll get back to you with our views on that. But as of right now, we think standalone Article 2 authorities exist for us to conduct this operation on behalf of the defense of the American people, that the president has those authorities, and seeking this funding is important in pursuit of that and our $1.5 trillion budget. But I wouldn't connect the two without consulting with our legal folks first.
In my remaining time, let me turn to you, Secretary Rollins. I appreciate that you have acknowledged that fishermen are farmers of the sea. I don't know whether you are aware whether any fishermen will be eligible for any of the supplemental funding. They too have faced many of the same challenges that our farmers have with high fuel costs, the impact from tariffs, disasters that we have seen. In the 15 seconds remaining, any help for our fishermen?
Well, I remember having the conversation with you when we were going through the process, and my commitment to you and to Senator Collins and some of our others on across the aisle was that it's time for USDA to recognize our fishermen as part of our farmers of the sea. That's never happened before. We now have an office at USDA focused on fishermen. And so I think as you all move forward with the supplemental, the conversation, and obviously up to you all what that looks like, but very supportive of treating our fishermen similarly to the rest of our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, I'd like to ask you to help me reconcile some numbers. It's my understanding that this whole supplemental funding request is $87.6 billion, and most of the funding, $67 billion, is for the Department of Defense. Yet we are told the Department of Defense still has $75 billion in unobligated funding from last year's reconciliation package. Is that true?
Roughly correct numbers, yes.
So you've left some change on the dresser before you prepared to come for this hearing. What's going to happen to that $75 billion?
Well, that 75 is, there's plans and designs on that, part of the rebuild of our military, which had to be undertaken. And so the One Big Beautiful Bill gave us specific avenues. I'd have to get you the exact numbers of what that is left to be allocated.
Does it have to do with the war in Iran?
No, this is rebuilding our military from what was not funded in the past under the Biden administration. So this is from 2026, one big beautiful bill, which helped move the president's priorities like Golden Dome for America, move away from all the woke priorities of what the Biden administration was pursuing, give us a chance to start cutting these deals on munitions, all the things that the president wanted us to focus on: shipbuilding, hypersonics. I mean, the Biden administration ignored hypersonics. They just decided to pretend like that technology didn't exist and we shouldn't invest in it. There are things. I don't know what Lloyd Austin did for 4 years. I really don't.
Well, I'm sure
the amount of neglect, the amount of stale thinking and bureaucracy, it was staggering when we took over. So one big beautiful bill gave us a chance to get caught back up.
Let me interrupt your speech for a minute, Mr. Secretary. It's my turn to ask questions. I've been listening patiently while you made your presentation. You estimated at one point that the cost of the war in Iran was $29 billion, but then added a caveat that there was a replacement of munitions, for example. Do you have a new estimate about what the war has cost us so far in the 5th month of the first year of this war in Iran?
Senator, the estimate we have as of today is $37.5 billion.
And is the current activity, which we've been told about, the exchange of fire back and forth in Iran, an indication that that number is going to go up in the months ahead?
Some of that number captures additional O&M, mill pay, and other that would be anticipated through the fiscal year. So some of that anticipates what costs would be going out in the future as well.
So the new number you've given me is what?
$37.5 billion. Senator.
And that represents the cost of the war through what period of time?
Through now for certain aspects of it, but also mill pay, O&M, other anticipated costs through September 30th, Senator.
General Kane, let me ask you a question. I joined a group of senators, some are here, Senator Rounds, Senator Coons, Senator Shaheen, and met with President Zelensky in Turkey during the NATO summit. He was very explicit in terms of what he needed to win. He feels the momentum in Ukraine is moving to his side, and that he is putting a foot forward instead of back. Is that your feeling?
Sir, I think the pressure that Ukraine is putting on Russia is substantive at this point.
Do you acknowledge his request that we help them with air defenses as a high priority?
Sir, I know he's made the request. Whether or not that moves forward is always a debate at our civilian leadership, but I'm aware of that request.
Are you aware of the fact that we appropriated and the president signed into law $400 billion of supplemental funding for Ukraine, including money for air defenses?
I am, sir.
Are you also aware the administration has informed us that that money will not be available in many aspects until the next president is in office?
Sir, I'm not aware of that. My understanding was that capital had been allocated, but I'll have to defer to my civilian leadership.
No, I'm sorry to tell you the pay plan tells us to be prepared to spend that money in fiscal year 29. The new president, whoever it may be, will make that decision. If you're talking about air defenses and the momentum on the side of Zelensky, what impact will it have if we cannot fund this for 3 years?
Sir, I want to highlight that the incredible work that the Ukraine industrial base is doing as they scale their own capabilities. It ranges from their surface-to-air capabilities to their air-to-air capabilities. I'll note that recently we had the first air-to-air kill where a Ukrainian F-16 shot down a Russian fighter. So I think their ability to scale their layered defense has come along a long way over the past couple years with the help and assistance of many.
General, thank you for your service to the country, and I'm sorry for our losses. I believe 17 servicemen have given their lives in Iran so far, and hundreds have been injured. We should acknowledge that fact. And let me also say, we're at a moment in history where we can win the war in Ukraine. That victory would be critically important for those people who have fought for more than 4 years against the odds and proven they can put Putin back on his heels. But instead of finding the money that they need now for air defenses, we're putting more money into this exchange with Iran, a war of choice which we never should have entered. Thank you, General.
Senator Moran.
Chairwoman Collins, thank you very much. Let me first begin with just a statement to you, Secretary Rollins. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your attention to disaster assistance. Hugely significant and important in many states represented here, but across the country. And it is as challenging circumstances as I've seen farmers in my time and representing them in the United States Congress. And I appreciate my colleague, Senator Rounds, for making that case today. I appreciate the efforts by Senator Bozeman, the chairman of the Ag Committee, and Senator Rounds and his Vice Chairman Shaheen for their efforts here on this committee for that effort. Secretary Hegseth, let me ask you about your recent visit to the 101st Airborne Division. You saw the MV-75 Cheyenne. You saw it firsthand and heard from soldiers, as I understand it, about the next generation capabilities, how they will transform the way we fight. The Cheyenne has broken through, and it appears to me, in the acquisition bureaucracy to deliver a capability for our warfighting much faster than it otherwise would have happened. As you look across acquisition, I mean, we're here talking about appropriations, but the ultimate success we'll have in defending our country is putting that money to work as quickly as possible. So as you look at acquisition, what would you tell me we learned from the Cheyenne? Is it a model how the department can, it intends to field the next generation of capacity going forward? What does the program need from this committee to meet both the schedule and the necessity of its capabilities?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I think it's one of the untold stories of our department is how we've tried to revolutionize the speed and scale of new acquisitions and procurement. Some of it through munitions and ensuring that companies pay for building their own factories and their own assembly lines so that we're saving billions and billions as taxpayers while companies invest. And when you invest in something with your own money, you want to see it succeed ahead of schedule and on time. Also opening the aperture so it's not just the prime contractors that are competing, but new entrants who make high cost and low cost capabilities. I think in particular on the Cheyenne and the Black Hawk and the replacement, the gap that some have identified could exist based on the hesitation on speed and replacement exists because of an austerity mindset, again, that goes back to the Biden administration of divest to invest. And so you end up divesting in certain systems like the Black Hawk before the next one is online, creating gaps for actual operators. And what we're funding in this supplemental and across this budget is the ability to do both. Make sure the systems we rely on the battlefield right now are delivered, and that newer entrants that we're going to need for long-range fight to deliver to be more survivable in contested environments, which you're talking about. When I had a chance to see it, the soldiers were proud to be in it because they felt like it would give them greater advantage in the future. We need to accelerate the timelines of those and deliver them even more quickly. And when you allow new entrants with all the right incentives, those things happen, and it's happening in that program.
Will that take place, I think you may have just said this, but will take place in this circumstance of the Cheyenne?
I believe in this administration, because of the policies of this administration, it is likely to do so. Just like the B-21, just like the F-47, just like so many other of our exquisite munitions that otherwise would have taken years and years to even get into development, we're moving those things left by, in some cases, years, so that we get them in the hands of warfighters who would need them right now and not held up in bureaucracy in this town.
Thank you, sir. Let me turn to you, General Kane. The department is requesting a significant supplemental to address the ongoing operational demands. Our adversaries are watching how we resource this moment. Beijing, Moscow, Tehran are all increasingly coordinating their activities and intelligence. In your judgment, do you believe our adversaries view this moment as an opportunity to exploit U.S. commitments elsewhere? And how does this supplemental ensure our deterrence posture and our commitments to allies remain credible in every theater all at once?
Well, sir, thanks for the question. In my job, it's to look across the globe and look at the range of trade-offs out there. We are the strongest military in the world. Our adversaries still fear America's ability to project power at the time and place of our choosing. There is no doubt that they are aligning, as I've said before. And I think this supplemental and whatever funding structure the Congress, working with the executive branch, decides to structure and give us the capital, we'll use that capital to ensure that we sustain that, sir.
You're assuring us that this supplemental and further efforts will reduce the risks to our nation and its national securities issues.
Yes, sir. I view this, and I've spoken to some of you on the phone leading up to this. I view this as future investments to buy down risk, similar to what I said Marshall thought through in those heady days in 1940, where the need to invest capital early to deliver scale is an opportunity that I hope we don't miss, Senator.
General, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Senator Reed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Secretary Rollins, I just want to reiterate a point that Senator Padilla made. We have $10 billion in this request for Midwestern farmers who are suffering because of the interruption of fuel and fertilizers because of the President Trump's war, unauthorized war. Yet, many states, blue states particularly, have submitted requests. Rhode Island has one. February, we had the worst snowstorm in our recent history, and we've been denied by the president. In fact, if you look at the numbers, 20% of blue states seem to get approved and about 80% of red states. I'm making a point, not asking a question. This is unfair. Thank you. Secretary Hegseth, on February 28th, when you initiated this war without authorization from Congress, the Straits of Hormuz was open and providing vital fuel supplies for the whole world. Now they're closed effectively, impacting globally the price of oil and the economies of the whole world. But the Department of Defense has been planning for potential operations against Iran for many, many years. And one of their obvious assumptions was that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed. Were you unaware of that?
Senator, you are correct. Nobody plans more and looks at more contingencies than our department. And so, of course, undertaking a historic effort like this, of this scope and scale, of course, the Strait of Hormuz was front and center in every single aspect of that. Hence why one of our key objectives to begin with was to sink the entirety of Iran's Navy, which its conventional Navy was sunk. Now, you can't get rid of every single fast boat and every single machine gun and a fast boat or every single coastal cruise missile. So we acknowledge that if the state decided to become a terror state shooting at commercial shipping, that would be an ongoing and contested part of the battle, to include their willingness to mine international water. So one side weaponized the strait, and we've been fighting back the entire time.
Completely aware that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed, and obviously sinking their ships has not affected their ability to affect.
And that was Secretary Hegseth strongly defending the supplemental request, and he's arguing that the world has become more dangerous. The U.S. military needs $1.5 trillion overall to maintain superiority. So the supplemental is needed, he says, to pay troops amid all this, replenish munitions, modernize weapons as well. So he also brought up the Trump, or rather the Biden administration previous to the Trump administration. He said the Biden administration for years engaged in neglect, saying military readiness has declined. So he described this funding as a generational investment. And just a quick comment, a highlight of what Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, said. He emphasized America's adversaries are cooperating more closely than before, and warfare is rapidly changing because of AI, drones, cyber warfare, and space operations as well. So in his view, the military needs consistent funding now before a larger conflict develops. Okay, let's move on now. The Trump administration is set to announce more trade actions connected to forced labor. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says they will take action soon. Greer did not provide a timeline on potential trade actions. Section 301 of U.S. trade law authorizes investigations into unfair trade practices. Greer was responding to a report that the administration plans to announce tariffs on dozens of countries soon. President Trump's temporary 10% global tariff is scheduled to expire on Friday. The administration has been working on a new strategy to rebuild tariff pressure. The effort follows the Supreme Court's decision striking down President Trump's global tariff policy in February. U.S. and Mexican trade negotiators are starting three-day talks aimed at revising the North American trade agreement. This just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on most goods from Canada. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pastar, has the story.
U.S. representatives are meeting with Mexican counterparts this week, kicking off negotiations surrounding the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. This marks the first formal discussions on changes to the agreement since the U.S. declined its extension earlier this month. Washington says the U.S. will leave the agreement within 10 years unless the three countries can agree on improvements, mostly to lower the unfair trade deficit. The start of the talks with Mexico comes just one day after the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on most goods from Canada. Trade Representative Jameson Greer on Tuesday telling CNBC the new tariffs come in response to Canada retaliating against President Trump's so-called Liberation Day. That's when the president imposed reciprocal tariffs in April of last year, shortly after taking office.
Of all the countries who retaliated against the United States, one was the People's Republic of China and the other was Canada. Some of the things they did is they banned the sale of U.S. liquor and other booze on Canadian shelves.
This graph shows the example Greer made. On the left, you will see that the U.S. exported almost $500 million worth of wine in 2024. A year later, it was at only around $100 million. And we see similar decreases with distilled spirits and beers. Greer says unfair trade practices have also affected the auto industry, dairy, and more.
And so we have a tailored action that covers a subset of Canadian goods. We aren't banning the goods like the Canadians have banned American alcohol. We're not putting a cap on them or limiting them like they've done to cars and dairy, but we have a tariff.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney saying he's now open to discuss the current situation.
I spoke with President Trump earlier this morning. We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks.
Carney says he wants to find a solution that works for the U.S. and for Canada. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
President Trump has imposed a new 50% tariff on Canadian imports. Joining us now to discuss is Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management and host of the show On the Record with Christian Briggs. So, Christian, good afternoon. Thank you for being here today. So, as you heard, the tariff covers around $20 billion worth of Canadian imports. I would imagine there will be some effect of this. What do you think is the impact?
Well, first, thanks for having me. It's an interesting way of which President Trump is negotiating a much more fair playing field when it comes to the export-import of products from Canada into the U.S. and U.S. into Canada. And rightly so, he's not wrong. If you look at the amount of premium or tariff or fees, you want to call it, for our products going into Canada, it's exorbitant. I mean, dairy alone, I can't see how we're selling 1 gallon of milk or any dairy product inside Canada. And that's a host of other things that Canada puts a massive amount, or they altogether don't even allow us to sell our products into Canada. So I think what Trump's trying to do is say, look, this isn't fair. If you want to have a reciprocal opportunity to be able to make bilateral exports and imports fair and on a more even platform, you're going to have to either start selling our products and let the consumer in Canada decide which is a better, yours or ours. And number two, if you want to sell into our country, which is your largest trading partner, first of all, you're going to have to then make sure that those products, you're not subsidizing a lot of those products to bring them further down in price so that it's almost like predatory selling, kind of like what the Chinese do, because a lot of times China does sell some of their stuff through Canada to get into the United States.
Okay, so these latest tariffs, do you think they will have the effect of protecting American workers?
100%. Look, you look at the population of Canada, you look at their GDP. Okay, the population, I think, of Oklahoma, not literally, but I'm going to make this kind of an exaggerated point, and the GDP of a small state in the United States is bigger than Canada almost. I mean, Texas certainly is. It has more people and it has a bigger GDP. California is like the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. So when you really think about this, and I appreciate the Prime Minister of Canada wanting to accelerate bilateral negotiations on a lot of these tariffs and certainly the products thereof, but he's had a year to do this. Carney knows that you're playing with fire if you're going to start to push back on your number one trading partner. When you look at the Canadian market, like a marketplace in general, whether it's electronics, whether it's grocery, dairy products, whether it's beef, poultry, or pork, and all those other kind of really important things that make up everyday living, Canada needs us way more than we need them. That doesn't mean that we can just push them around, but what it means is what President Trump's trying to do, number one, save the American jobs, increase productivity for the American manufacturing industry, and number three, bring the money back home in a way that's fair and even. That's all he's asking to do.
Okay, Christian, whenever we talk about tariffs, not just me and you, but whenever the subject of tariffs come up, there's always the thing that follows, which is inflation. So, I mean, some people are worried, consumers and analysts are saying maybe that could cause products and things that people buy at the grocery store go up in price. What is your response to that? Who ultimately pays the tariffs? The consumer, importer, exporter? Talk to us about inflation.
Okay, that's a great point. Let's talk about the near-term impact, or I call it the challenges of the tariff. And we're not talking a war here. What we're talking about is the negotiations for long-term understanding of prosperity for both countries. But remember, President Trump's going to always put America first. So American workers will come first, American manufacturers, American farmers. I mean, he loves the American farmers. He's gone out of his way to make sure that the farmers have, first and foremost, opportunities to sell outside the United States. Look at China and the soybeans. So when you ask about inflation, which is a great question, what he's got to do is almost like an investment. Tariffs are a negotiating for a long-term strategic investment. So whenever somebody says, I've got a great idea, a great product, a great service, there has to be some value to that to where you can garner investment capital in order to be able to launch your product or service. What President Trump is saying, we're making an investment in the long-term growth of both domestic manufacturing for export, as well as bringing home a lot of the money that we're losing with trade deficits. And also the third part, we were opening up new markets in Canada, which is really what we're doing. If they start selling our dairy products and other things that they've either, one, willfully held back, exorbitantly put tariffs on, and not allowed us to be able to have a bilateral agreement that is fair for both countries. So yes, there will be short-term inflation, but see, that's not really a problem because that's the investment. People look at the inflation as a negative. I look at it as a positive for very short term because the long-term gain is substantially higher than what we're going to pay. If you look at this last month, we're running now positive trade surpluses in certain areas. You know, between the Treasury and Trump, you know, Scott Bessent is doing a rock star job. Can't say enough about him and President Trump and his team. The investment of the tariffs on the short-term inflation is going to pay off because it's a long-term investment. So a few dollars today could garner billions of dollars down the road for us.
And could there be also some cases where the exporter actually eats the cost of the tariff? They will lower their prices just so that their products can get into the U.S. And if they do that, the price actually doesn't go up in the United States because they're lowering their price initially. Are there cases like that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people miss that. A lot of times when you have a manufacturer, distributor, wholesaler, which is obviously the middleman to the consumer from the manufacturer or the aggregator of the product, they'll lower their prices to maintain the consistency of price power, okay, points of what we call in the marketplace, the point of sale, POSs, and then be able to do that in such a way so they don't have any reflection of declining sales, but they can maintain it. They'll even eat a little bit of the margin to maintain selling. What we don't want is what is called predatory selling, which China's been doing for decades. They've been caught multiple times, and we've had to sanction them in certain ways. So Canada is not really going to do something like that. They're a lot more understanding of what the principles of what the tariffs are for. It's a negotiating platform and a way of which to make a long-term investment prosperous. But yes, I'm sure they're going to have to lower their price, or they probably will. I mean, I would. I think any person in this type of arena selling across border, from Canada to the U.S., which is not a far place, but it is still a cross-border transaction, will lower to be competitive, to stay competitive, and further their business opportunities. But they're going to be like anybody else. They're going to hope their government negotiates something that's fair and equitable, so we don't see these spikes and downturns or spikes and downturns back and forth on these tariffs.
And maybe just one last thing here, Christian. I'm also thinking perhaps we might not even see the 50% tariff in the long term or in the immediate short term either, because we heard the Prime Minister Carney saying that negotiations are underway with President Trump. Maybe all this is a negotiating tactic, as you alluded to earlier, that could potentially end with concessions, and we might not even see the 50% tariff as stated right now.
I would say that you're right on the money, my brother. I think that's bingo, okay? 6 in a row. Because remember this, remember some time ago last year when we were talking about putting 100% tariffs on imported wine from France because President Macron was starting to rattle a little bit off about, oh, we're going to tariff this, we're going to tariff that if the United States doesn't back off. And President Trump goes, you know what? I think we're going to put 100% tariff on French imported wine. Within less than 60 minutes, I believe it was like 54 minutes, President Macron was back on the phone talking to Trump going, okay, I relent, I back up, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. There will be no tariffs on those imported U.S. goods. Please don't put 100% tariff on the wine. President Trump goes, great negotiations there. President Macron, sounds like we got a great deal. And I think that's what this is. It's not trying to bully people into something that is not equitable. What President Trump is trying to do, and believe me when I say this, he will be successful at this. It may take a bit of time, a little bit of negotiating power, but I don't think anybody wants a trade war with the United States. Look at our GDP. Look at our stock market. Look at everything that's going on. We're doing great, and we're bringing down the trade deficit. It's working. So I don't think the Prime Minister of Canada wants to do anything other than to negotiate a fair and equitable deal that's great for everybody, including Canada for that matter, because that's what he represents.
All right, sounds good, Christian. Good to speak with you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, 10 consecutive nights of U.S. strikes on Iran. A foreign policy analyst weighs in on what comes next and the risk of a wider war. Stay tuned for more after this break.
Are you sitting at home living in pain? Maybe it's in your hands, maybe your back or your hips. The good news is you don't need to live in pain. Why? Because there is Omega XL, a one-of-a-kind, natural, powerful joint relief supplement created from the green-lip mussels of New Zealand. Drug-free, non-habit forming. It's small, easy to swallow, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research. If you're experiencing daily aches and pains due to aging and overuse, try Omega XL. Just ask anybody who uses it. The results are undeniable.
I had a lot of joint pain, and that slowed me down.
I had considerable pain in my back.
Really felt the pain. I mean, in my ankles and in my heels.
I'm telling you about something that's gonna change your life. It has revived me.
This works.
I'm not a prisoner anymore to my pain.
As I was getting older, my joints started to feel that wear and tear. But then I tried Omega XL, and it changed my life. Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL. And look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years. And Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great. If you're in pain, I want you to know that there is real hope out there. I'm living proof. See the difference it can make in your life, just like it did in mine.
Call now or order online to receive our special TV offer. Buy one bottle of Omega XL and get a second free. Plus, we'll also include a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. 2 free bottles for the price of 1 bottle of Omega XL. A total value of $115. You pay only $49.95 and it ships free. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee. Buy one, get 2 free. Call or go online right now.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
President Trump threatening to step up strikes on Iran after 3 U.S. troops were killed in the past few days. He says he's focused on doing the right thing instead of being concerned about the midterms. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the latest on what the president is saying today.
Good afternoon to you as well. So it comes as the U.S. is now conducting the 10th consecutive day of strikes against Iran. And that's hours after President Trump warned that Iran will have to pay many times over as they kills an American soldier. Now, President Trump, speaking with the Lebanese president in the Oval Office this afternoon, says that Iran wants desperately to meet, but the U.S. is now not interested in meeting them until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way. The president saying this. Watch.
They want to desperately meet, and until they're ready to meet in a meaningful way, we have no interest in even.
We're going to hit them, as the president said, 10 times harder, which every night we're degrading them further and further. And the president has all the options necessary. If they want to talk, they can talk. Otherwise, they can deal with the War Department, and we're prepared.
Restarted between the U.S. and Iran about 10 days ago after Iran hit a commercial ship in the Strait of Hormuz, violating the Memorandum of Understanding with the U.S. The U.S. has been striking Iran every day ever since, and the president today signaling even more strikes by saying that the U.S. will hit any site that Iran is thinking about nuclear development. In particular, the president says that the U.S. will be hitting Iran's Pixax Mountain probably very soon and very heavily. And that's the heavily fortified underground complex near Iran's damaged uranium enrichment facility, where President Trump says Iran may have moved their nuclear centrifuges into. President Trump says even as he's talking about it now in public, signaling that he's going to hit it, Iran cannot do anything about it. Watch.
Any site where they're even thinking about nuclear, we'll be hitting it very, very powerfully. Now, nobody knows except the Iranians the damage that we've done to them. And honestly, they haven't seen anything yet. We've been nice. We've been nice.
The president adds that he's focused on doing the right thing instead of being concerned about the potential impact on midterm elections. Meanwhile, the president's vow to strike Iran many times harder comes after Iran over the weekend killed at least 2 U.S. troops by hitting a U.S. base in Jordan, while a third U.S. soldier was killed during the detonation of an Iranian drone in Iraq. Now, this morning, the U.S. military releasing the identity of that third U.S. soldier killed. He's Sergeant Michael Swinton, 30, from North Carolina. His wife posting a picture of him on Facebook showing him hugging a little girl. Meanwhile, 2 other soldiers who were killed in Jordan were 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyra Fian from Hawaii and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez from Texas. Iran today continued to hit neighboring countries, especially Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, where U.S. forces are present. The administration, meanwhile, vowing to respond as House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying that Iran is now turning everyone in the region into an enemy by hitting all of its neighbors, adding that the Trump administration is now working around the clock to prevent these tragic losses. Watch.
And I know that this administration is working around the clock to resolve that in a way so they don't suffer any more troop losses. This is a great tragedy. It shouldn't happen. But it is a very important objective that I believe we've achieved to ensure that the largest sponsor of state of terrorism does not have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump today stressing that the U.S. has the best military equipment in the world and that Iran has indeed been heavily degraded. But he does acknowledge that the last attack on Jordan could have been prevented if other people could have been better at doing their job, adding that it could have been prevented if different, quote, operators were in charge. Now, President Trump says he will attend a dignified transfer of the bodies of these troops to pay respect to them. And that's going to happen at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thank you for the report. And joining us now to discuss the latest in the Iran war is Brian Leib, foreign policy analyst and CEO of Henry Public Relations. So, Brian, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. I just wanted to get your first reactions because President Trump meeting with the Lebanese president today at the White House, discussing how to disarm the Iran-backed Hezbollah terror group, and President Trump saying that he's open to having talks with Hezbollah directly. So, your overall thoughts, any comments you have?
Don, good to see you. Good to be back with you. I think it was a really powerful moment for the Lebanese president to be sitting in the White House right now and speaking to President Trump and talking about, I think the words out of the Lebanese president's mouth were that he was so happy to be here and that he thinks that his country is going to be able to achieve lasting peace with the state of Israel because of President Trump. So, whether or not President Trump talks to Hezbollah or not, I don't think that's going to happen, though. But one thing is for sure, the table has been set for the first time in decades where the Lebanese president and the Israeli government are going to continue working together to get rid of Hezbollah once and for all and to create lasting peace between these two countries. Okay,
let's talk about the Iran war. 10 nights of consecutive strikes on an Iranian military structure. Your thoughts now on this after Iran broke the ceasefire agreement?
Well, we're going to be going into another night of strikes and then another night of strikes after that. I don't think that President Trump is going to be taking his foot off the gas pedal anytime soon. He gave them every possible chance to have a diplomatic off-ramp to this, even going as far as to dignify that country, the Islamic Republic, with an MOU. This is a terrorist state, and we dignified them with an official MOU from our government and our country, the ultimate olive branch for peace. And what did they do within 24 hours, 48 hours? They gave the green light to Hezbollah to start more attacks, and then Iran themselves started firing on ships in the Strait of Hormuz once again. So, President Trump has given them time and time again, opportunity, I should say, over and over again to try and find some kind of a deal here. It's very clear to me at this point there is no diplomatic resolution to dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran. After all, Don, they are the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism. So I think the strikes are going to continue. They're going to get ramped up quite a bit. And President Trump has his eye on the ball at this point.
So the regime still at this point making strong statements, threatening statements. How do you stop that? Because it seems like they still have the morale currently to conduct these strikes, sending drones, missiles. How do you break the morale of the Iranian regime so that it doesn't feel confident in making these strikes anymore and these threatening statements?
They're going to continue making threatening statements. They threatened to kill President Trump over the weekend, and then they ultimately carried through in killing several U.S. service members, Don. So, they are as weak as they've ever been before. They still do have some missile capabilities and some drone capabilities. Their morale is at an all-time low. Whether or not they're ever going to admit that is something different. They play head games both internally in their country with their own people and, of course, around the world. But they have never been this weak. Their economy is in shambles. The Iranian rial is as low as it has ever been before. So the morale inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran is at an all-time low right now. They can project strength as much as they want, but at the end of the day, they're very weak. And President Trump is going to continue to hit strategic assets and strategic sites inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, designed to really cripple them once and for all, I think.
Okay, just for clarity, you're saying essentially the Iranian regime will be defiant to their last breath.
Of course. I mean, they are martyrs in a sense. This is what they are trained to die, for their belief, of radical Islam. So they're going to go down to the very last round that they have in their machine gun, the very last round they have in their missile tube. But ultimately, and I think we also heard President Trump, say this earlier today in the White House, that what the world and what the Iranians have seen from us from a military perspective really hasn't even scratched the surface. And I believe that to be very true. We're probably been operating maybe at a 20 or 30%, military capacity. So there's a lot more to come and a lot more that you're going to see from the U.S. military.
Can you explain for us, in your view, why Iran is targeting countries around it, like Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan? It seems like I mean, it doesn't make sense. It seems like it's trying to isolate itself from everybody.
They've always isolated themselves from everyone. They've always believed that they are the Persian culture is subservient to every other culture in the Middle East. So they've always thought that they are. They're the king of the region. And, I will tell you, I didn't have it on my bingo card, that they would be launching strikes against countries like the UAE and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. And let's not forget, I mean, as of right now, they've been targeting military bases, but it was just a month ago that they were targeting civilian infrastructure inside of Dubai and Abu Dhabi and inside of Bahrain and other cities and other countries. So they've shown us once again, who they are, Don, and this is a terrorist death cult that has no interest in any kind of normalization with any countries in the region, certainly not with the United States or Israel. And they're going to go down to the very last bullet, the very last missile that they have. But I don't know what they're thinking, because when you stack our military up against them, it's night and day.
So you said Iran is targeting everybody, has been doing that. Are you surprised after the MOU broke apart, when Iran broke it, so far it hasn't targeted Israel?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? They haven't targeted Israel directly as of yet. I think, the Israelis have an enormous amount of capability when it comes to, hitting from the sky. I mean, they have over 40, I believe, F-35 stealth fighter jets. They have over 150 or 200, very advanced fighter jets that they can put in the sky. And we saw what happened, right, during the 12-day war, last year when the United States Air Force and the Israeli Air Force worked together. Our two countries, we had free reign to hit whatever target we wanted anywhere in that country. So I think at this point, the Iranians haven't gone after Israel yet, because they understand that if they do that, that really is going to be the final straw for Israel. And Israel themselves, just like I mentioned, the United States has been relatively restrained in terms of what we've been doing from a military capacity. I would say the same from the Israelis. I mean, the Israelis have a top 5 Air Force in the world. They have special ops that rival, our U.S. Navy SEALs. So the Israelis have quite a bit of capabilities. And I think if the Iranians were to poke that bear vis-a-vis the Israelis, for the last time, the Israelis would just have such an overwhelming force that it would be lights out for the Iranians, in my opinion.
Okay, Brian, just one final question here. Your comments on President Trump saying earlier, I think last week, that infrastructure is on the table, strikes on Iranian infrastructure. And President Trump said the U.S. will probably target Pickaxe Mountain, thought to be a nuclear storage facility as well. Your comments on this strategy?
Yeah, I think it has to happen. Listen, the Iranians still have some elements of highly enriched uranium. We're lying to ourselves if we say anything otherwise. It's true that the strikes last June, where we hit several of the Iranian nuclear sites and rendered a lot of their highly enriched uranium into nuclear dust. That's true. That definitely did happen. But the Iranians were smart enough to create enough kind of redundancy when it comes to the highly enriched uranium. And some of it is in that new location that you just mentioned. I think President Trump's going to go after it. Just a couple hours ago, we repositioned a lot of our B-1 bombers that we had in England. There's been video of them taking off, so I'm sure that they're going to be landing somewhere in the Middle East. And again, we have so many resources, to hit from the sky. Whether it's the B-1 or the B-2 or the B-52, and then we have the fighter jets and everything else. So I think we're going to see a lot of things ramp up here quite a bit, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Okay, Brian, good to speak with you today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Don. Take care.
The search continues to recover bodies buried underneath the rubble following last month's earthquakes in Venezuela. Families are still looking for missing loved ones.
Knowing they are there is enough. What we need is to recover their bodies and give them a proper burial, and to be able, mentally and emotionally, to close that chapter. That is what we are looking for. That is why we say this is only just beginning, and it will continue like this.
Footage showed rescue workers and foreign forensics teams recovering a body. Some residents used hand tools, pickaxes, and an electric hammer to dig through the debris. According to Venezuelan officials, the 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude quakes killed at least 5,000 people. Experts, including the United States Geological Survey, have indicated that the final death toll could be nearly double that. President Trump says he'll allow airlines to resume direct flights to Lebanon, the decision coming more than 40 years after the U.S. suspended the route for American carriers. President Ronald Reagan's administration halted direct flights between the U.S. and Lebanon in 1985 after members of Hezbollah hijacked TWA Flight 847. In a post on Truth Social, President Trump said he made the decision following a meeting with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun at the White House. The move comes as the U.S. brokers peace negotiations between Israel and Lebanon. The two neighbors announced a framework agreement last month. The initial deal included a plan for Israeli forces to withdraw from Lebanon's south and disarming Hezbollah. President Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence clears a key Senate hurdle by a single vote. More news after this break. Stay tuned.
Today's seniors are enjoying life more than ever before, and part of that comes from the independence of driving.
However, car insurance for older drivers becomes more expensive the older we get.
Just because I'm a senior, and maybe you are too, do we really have to pay outrageously high insurance rates? Well, the answer is no, we don't.
When was the last time you checked to make sure you're paying the lowest available rate? Well, maybe it's time to give your car insurance a tune-up, just to make sure your rates are running properly.
You change your oil, you change your tires, well, maybe it's time to change your car's insurance company.
Are you paying too much for your auto insurance? If so, you're just throwing your money away.
So the only way to really know if you're paying too much is to call the number on your screen.
1-800-952-5196. 1-800-952-5196.
You'll speak with a licensed insurance agent. They may have an insurance plan that could lower your yearly premiums by hundreds of dollars.
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
Come on, call now.
You may be able to save a lot of money, maybe hundreds of dollars a year. Just call the number on your screen and speak with a licensed insurance agent.
Yes, it is possible for seniors to save on car insurance. You could lower your premiums by hundreds of dollars a year.
As a responsible driver, you always check your gauges, right? And you check for other cars and pedestrians. You check your oil and you check your mirrors.
Well, now is the time to check on your auto insurance rates. You need to make sure that you're not paying more than you need to. Call the number on your screen right now.
1-800-952-5196. 1-800-952-5196.
I've devoted my life to combining cutting-edge science with biblical wisdom, and I believe Healing Leaves Tea is the Bible's best-kept health secret. In Revelation 22, the Bible reveals the tree of life and declares the leaves are for the healing of the nations. Amazingly, science confirms what Scripture declares. These leaves support digestion and immunity, maintain healthy inflammation, and boost energy. So instead of another supplement, I created Healing Leaves Tea. It's caffeine-free, convenient, and delicious, hot or cold. Thousands are making Healing Leaves Tea part of their daily wellness routine, and now you can too.
Call the number on your screen for this exclusive TV deal and save 30% on your preferred customer order with free shipping and risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. As a bonus, we'll include the Beginner's Guide to Essential Oils, a $16.99 value free. Call the number on your screen to learn more right now.
The Senate Intelligence Committee has voted to advance President Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence. The committee's 9-8 vote brings his nomination to the Senate floor. President Trump nominated Jay Clayton for D&I last month. As part of his testimony before the committee, Clayton emphasized that he would work to increase the American public's trust in the intelligence community. During a July 15th hearing, Clayton was questioned about the Justice Department's recent decision to subpoena journalists at the New York Times. Clayton is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, which issued the subpoenas. He said he could not discuss the specifics of an ongoing investigation at a public hearing. The state of New Jersey has found some 6,600 non-citizens on its voter rolls. Governor Mikey Sherrill says under 400 of them voted illegally.
In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state. When New Jerseyans applied for a driver's license or identification at the MVC, they were asked if they wanted to register to vote. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
The governor says the software error was corrected in June 2024, but it's unclear which elections may have been impacted. It's also unclear if Murphy administration knew about the error. She calls this whole situation unacceptable and says her administration has launched a comprehensive investigation. New Jersey is currently working to remove anyone who is illegally registered from the voter rolls. The state is also ditching the software vendor in question, IDEMIA, and transitioning to another vendor. The governor promises that she will treat election integrity seriously, ensure accountability, and prevent something like this from happening again. The Trump administration says the software errors that allowed hundreds of non-citizens to vote in New Jersey is, quote, exactly why Congress must pass the Safe America Act immediately. And in a press release from the White House, it states the bill requires states to use the Department of Homeland Security's SAVE system to confirm citizenship before registering anyone to vote in federal elections, noting this was a safeguard New Jersey has refused to implement. The legislation also mandates voter ID for federal elections. And the Trump administration is pausing over $1 billion in Medicaid payments to California and Minnesota. The decision comes amid allegations of fraud.
That includes more than $867 million for California and over $200 million for Minnesota. If those states want that money, they need to provide documentation that these payments are legitimate.
Kennedy said HHS and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services are using AI and other tools to identify suspicious activity. A review found California's claims for certain in-home care programs exceeded national trends. The agency also reviewed Medicaid claims in 14 high-risk service areas in Minnesota, identifying claims that require additional documentation. CMS Administrator Mehmet Oz added that both agencies have already identified and stopped $42 billion in Medicare fraud. Stopping improper payments before they leave government accounts, the Treasury Department says it has launched a new safeguard to prevent federal payments from going to deceased individuals. The move is part of President Trump's efforts to combat waste, fraud, and abuse. The Treasury says the new verification system has screened more than 885 million federal payments worth nearly $3 trillion. The process identified more than 4,900 payments totaling nearly $100 million that were linked to deceased recipients. Those payments were returned to federal agencies for review before any money was sent. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the new system strengthens protections for taxpayer dollars and ensures government payments reach their intended recipients.
This is part of what President Trump calls his common sense agenda. It's common sense. And President Trump issued an executive order for us to be able to go to the do not pay, to have it interact with the Treasury payment systems. And as a result, so far, we've saved about $100 million, payments that didn't go to deceased people and that would have gone out. We think that there's up to 350 million that we can stop before the end of this year, and that goes along with the Vice President's task force on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. The GAO estimates that it might be, this number might be up to $500 billion, which is about 1.66% of GDP.
The Treasury Department says the program was expanded after President Trump signed the Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act earlier this year. Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration says it's continuing to investigate Taylor Farms amid the ongoing cyclosporasis outbreak linked to Taco Bell. The FDA saying it continues to believe that shredded lettuce supplied by the company is responsible. On July 18th, health regulators said that a sample of Taylor Farms shredded lettuce from central Mexico tested positive for cyclospora. The FDA later determined that the result could be a false positive. Mexico's health minister has said there is no evidence yet to suggest lettuce sourced from Mexico caused the outbreak. According to CDC, more than 1,600 people infected with cyclosporasis have reported eating at Taco Bell in Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia. Michigan's Department of Health and Human Services said it has detected over 6,000 cases in the state as of July 20th. Novo Nordisk is suing Eli Lilly, accusing the rival drug maker of false advertising. Novo alleges that Lilly violated state and federal law by claiming its weight loss medicines outperform Novo's drugs. Novo filed a lawsuit in New Jersey federal court. It alleges that Lilly compared the highest approved doses of its drug with lower doses of Novo's Wegovy and Ozempic in its advertisements. Novo said it's seeking a court order requiring Lilly to pull its ads and run a new and corrective ad campaign. The Danish pharmaceutical company added its plans are to seek a preliminary injunction if Lilly does not voluntarily withdraw the ads. Novo is also seeking damages. Boeing can issue airworthiness certificates for all its 737 MAX and 787 jets again. The FAA previously banned Boeing from doing so after 2 deadly crashes. The FAA announces that following a thorough safety review, it is allowing Boeing to resume issuing airworthiness certifications. The certificate is issued at the last stage of an aircraft's production process and confirms the plane is safe to operate. The FAA had stopped allowing Boeing to issue airworthiness certificates for newly made 737 MAX planes in 2019. It came following 2 crashes that killed over 340 people. The FAA banned Boeing from issuing airworthiness certificates for 787 planes in 2022 due to production quality issues. In September 2025, the FAA began allowing Boeing to start issuing these certificates for some of the 787 and 737 MAX planes. The FAA says it will continue inspecting, monitoring, and auditing Boeing's production system. Tropical storm Bertha is strengthening as it tracks toward the central Gulf Coast. A tropical storm warning is now in effect from coastal Alabama into parts of Mississippi and Louisiana. Forecasters say tropical storm conditions are expected in the warning area by tonight into tomorrow. The National Hurricane Center says the storm has strengthened from a tropical depression, producing maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. A storm surge watch is also in effect, with life-threatening coastal flooding possible in parts of the northern Gulf Coast. Heavy rain could trigger flash flooding from West Virginia to southern Louisiana through Thursday, with flooding also possible further west later this week. Here's more on Tropical Storm Bertha.
Lately, in the last couple of updates, we're starting to see some deep convection starting to wrap around the center, which we hadn't formed up until this point.
Officials in Florida keeping a close eye on Tropical Storm Bertha. It formed Monday, spinning bands of heavy rain into the panhandle.
So we're starting to see the system get a little bit better organized.
Bertha is the second named storm of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. It's forecast to potentially hit parts of the Gulf Coast from Florida to Texas, bringing coastal flooding, heavy rain, and high winds. Some areas already feeling the impact.
We left out around 6 a.m. It was actually nice and smooth. Then the wind started kicking up around 7:30. Then we started having a real hard push and wind around 8.
In Florida, emergency management officials are standing by and monitoring the storm. Meanwhile, residents in parts of Mississippi are trying to mitigate the risk of getting hit with severe weather again as they continue recovering from flooding that struck back in June. Dry air and the storm's large size have kept it from strengthening into a healthy tropical cyclone. But officials warn, don't let your guard down.
We never turn our back on a system in the Gulf.
If things take a turn for the worse, be ready. If not,
always use any system like this as a walkthrough, as a rehearsal for when you actually have to activate.
And in New York, calling for the freedom to believe for those living under the Chinese regime. Falun Gong practitioners held a rally and candlelight vigil outside the Chinese consulate yesterday. They were marking the anniversary of a campaign of persecution by the Chinese Communist Party. Hundreds gathered with banners, speeches, and candles to remember practitioners who lost their lives for their faith. Several speakers shared personal accounts of imprisonment, torture, job loss, and family separation in China. The event also featured calls to end the persecution of Falun Gong and statements from 17 Chinese nationals announcing their withdrawal from the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliated organizations. Since 1999, the Chinese Communist Party has tried to eradicate Falun Gong, a spiritual practice centered on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. An untold number of people have been imprisoned, tortured, subjected to forced labor, and even killed for their organs under the CCP's brutal campaign.
I'm happy to support and to condemn the actions of the Communist Party. There is no place in New York City or even around the world for stuff like that. It's just horrible. Families are families. The Falun Dafa community is the most honorable and humble community that I've ever met in my life. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. And when you get to know them, you know what life is really supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about harmony. It's supposed to be about friendship, dedication.
To raise awareness of another year of human rights violations by the Chinese Communist Party, Falun Gong practitioners and human rights advocates will hold a rally and march in our nation's capital. Watch our special coverage July 23rd, this Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll take you to the historic Lincoln Memorial for the rally, give you an excellent view of the march, and bring in guests to unpack the Chinese regime's persecution campaign inside China and around the world. Police pursuits, unexpected landings, and breathtaking sights, all from a different point of view. Have more news after the break. Stay tuned.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
I think building kindness in children from a very young age is foundational to their growth, to building their character, to allow them to share with each other in a classroom and in a space that is safe, like in the Ganjin World platform.
I'm a New York State certified teacher. Currently, I teach in a public school in upstate New York. And I'm also a Ganjin World Campus channel creator.
I've been fortunate to use Ganjin World's Teachers Premium channel for the past 3 years, and it's been shaping my curriculum and teaching, both in the classroom setting and in our homeschool.
If children can learn to support each other from a very young age and encourage each other and help, it'll only strengthen the future of our society.
You can just assure yourself everything on Ganjin campus, on Ganjin World, it will be safe, it will be clean.
Sparked many positive changes in our students.
Ganjin Campus equips educators worldwide with powerful Teachers Premium channels and high-quality learning resources to help children learn and grow safely online. When you support one teacher, Ganjin World matches your support to help another. Support Ganjin Campus. Scan to learn more.
Now over to sports news. As the World Cup final is now in the books, an estimated 2 million fans packed the streets of Madrid to celebrate Spain's victory. And Ferran Torres drew attention during the parade, posting a video online wearing a red hat that reads, "Make Spain great again." The celebration came after Spain defeated defending champions Argentina 1-0, with Torres scoring the winning goal in extra time. President Trump attended the final and joined FIFA President Gianni Infantino for the trophy presentation. As the game ended after the final whistle blow, a brawl between Spanish and Argentine players erupted. FIFA has confirmed that it has opened a disciplinary investigation and will determine whether further action is warranted. And a young family in Australia has welcomed 4 identical baby girls in a rare birth. Doctors believe it may be the first naturally conceived pregnancy of its kind in the country. Here's that story.
Too tiny for their parents' arms just yet, these 4 little girls are proof the rarest beginnings can have the brightest futures.
They have come from one fertilised egg that is split 4 times, which is incredible.
Occurring in just 1 in 15 million pregnancies, it's an Australian first and one of only a few cases worldwide.
To share a placenta just means that splitting has happened relatively late in the embryo life, so exceptionally rare.
Parents Janita and Jotham already had 4 kids, rolling the dice one more time.
When they found out that they had 4 babies instead of 1, they were quite shocked.
The pregnancy extremely complex.
And there is a high risk of mortality and morbidity for these babies and for mum.
But thanks to the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital, Emily, Harriet, Alexa and Catherine were safely delivered by C-section at 28 weeks, each weighing just over 1 kilogram. From mum, one little hand, one giant miracle. Every day our miracle babies grow stronger is another answered prayer. We love you more than words can ever say.
Long term, their outlook will be really good.
A suspect ended up above the law, but only momentarily, when a vehicle they were fleeing ended up on top of a pursuing police car. Here's what happened.
Watch an Atlanta area police pursuit go from this to this. A joint law enforcement effort to apprehend a suspect wanted on drug charges kicked off a brief chase that didn't go far. Sandy Springs police say once the suspect vehicle took off, it struck a concrete barrier, lifting its rear end up and landing on the pursuing patrol car. The suspect then tried to flee on foot, but again, didn't get far. The department said he was apprehended without further incident. Remember, no one is above the law, even if you happen to end up above the law. From above is where a surreal situation stemmed in Texas, where KTRK reports a small plane attempting to land on a nearby airstrip clearly missed its mark, instead coming to land on top of a nearby house. The pilot was reportedly treated for minor injuries. No one was reported hurt inside the home, which, amazingly enough, is located on Kitty Hawk Street. You know, Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers. Read a book, kids. Finally, the view from the air up there can be quite fair if you've got the artistic chops to back it up. Take a look at some of the winners from the 2026 International Aerial Photographer of the Year competition. More than 1,500 entries from around the world were whittled down to winners for Best Photographer and Photograph, as well as categories like Above Water, Mountains, and Snow. It just goes to show you don't necessarily have to go far to capture breathtaking bird's-eye views. You just have to go up. More winners and finalist submissions can be viewed in the ebook at internationalaerialphotographer.com.
Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. We're taking a quick break. We'll be back with more news. And remember, NTD Evening News is at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.